Good morning, everyone. My name is Barksdale Hagans, and I am with the Fairfax County Office of Human Rights and Equity Programs. I have the pleasure of being the host and moderator for today's program. I want to thank you all first for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this morning's Northern Virginia Housing Summit. Our theme is Northern Virginia Resiliency. Together, there is strength in unity. Now, this is a critical moment in time demanding action. 5 of the neighboring localities here in Northern Virginia have joined together in an attempt to identify and provide meaningful housing-related options for our collective community. In light of the ongoing and ever-evolving activities occurring at the federal level and that have negatively impacted the residents of Northern Virginia, particularly as it affects residents' ability to pay rent, to pay mortgage, and to keep a roof over your heads, the City of Alexandria, the County of Arlington, City of Falls Church, Prince William County, and Fairfax County have come together as a show of unity, strength, and solidarity to stand with you. It is not lost on us as government professionals that we are in a state of emergency. So we want you to know we are prepared to come alongside you to meet the moment and address these issues head on. Today's program is full of experts, skilled legal and housing professionals that will hopefully share information of possible options and resources that you can take advantage of and that will be able to help anyone who is facing any type of housing payment challenges. So with that being said, let's get started. Uh-oh. Excuse me. I have the honor and pleasure of bringing down here to the well a man of sound governance and a dynamic leader. Our leader here in Fairfax County, the Fairfax County Executive, Mr. Brian Hill. Mr. Hill.
You know, like COVID, that surprised me. I'm sitting over there talking to Michael, and I'm hearing my name. Thank you. Well, good morning and welcome. I hope everybody's doing well. A lot of changes going on in 1600, aren't there? Yeah? You don't know what 1600 is? Pennsylvania Avenue? Think about it. Work with me. Please, work with me. Whew, I tell you. So today's topic is resilience. Together there is strength and unity. Just giving you a little history of Fairfax County. And I believe it was 1971, we created a position for the first EEO coordinator. And that was because we had some issues and we didn't have enough unity. In 1991, we created the Office of Equity Programs. So when I look at Fairfax County, I'm looking at from 91 to 2025. That is a long time we've been working on this topic. I won't say problem, I will say topic, because as we look at the problem, we're going to continuously try to shape and change how we move forward. And if we don't do it together, we don't get it done. This conference today is all about us being one. It's not about Fairfax County. It's not about Prince William County. It's not about Alexandria City, Arlington, Loudoun. It is about Northern Virginia. It is about the Commonwealth of Virginia. And most importantly, it's about the United States of America. If we don't get this right, we have some significant challenges. Today, there's going to be special topics on rental and mortgage assistance options. Now, I'm thinking about that. Back in 1993, I bought my first house. And while I was at the loan administrator, he said, you have a problem with your financial issues. And I'm looking to the right of me at that time was my ex-wife. And I said, I beg your pardon? And he looked right at her, and then she basically whispered in my ear, I had to pay for books, didn't pay it on the credit card, still paying off the credit card bills. And I immediately said, take her off the loan, she's on the next loan. And boy, it was tight. But my mother, God bless her soul, 88 years old, told me today, go give Michael a really good one today. And I'm, Michael, she says, hello. And she said to me, you know, as a kid, making sure you can pay everything. If you're going to put it on your credit card, if you're going to get at home, make sure you have the money to do it so they can't tell you no. Thank God I listened to her, because they've never, ever told me no. Despite the way I look, they've never told me no. Back in the day, I had longer hair, a little skinnier, a little bit more athletic, but my mind was still sharp. Human rights and protections is what we've been doing in Fairfax County. We've done audits. We're going to continue to do audits, but I tell you guys, it's going to be a lot more challenging going forward. And we all have to work together to ensure that our residents are able to do what they need to do. I want to thank Delegate Maldonado for being here today. Josh, thank you for being here. Your support is unmeasurable. I really, really appreciate that. And if Delegate Hamer is in the internet somewhere, ethers, watching, appreciate you as well. I believe you're going to be speaking virtually. The state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia needs to step up, guys, and we need to make sure that they understand that. This conference, this day, I have 10 minutes left? I got 10 minutes left, Mike. I could just talk about anything for 10 minutes. Okay. All right, Knicks versus Pacers. See, I knew you and I were tight already. I'm not going to take 10 minutes. Unfortunately, I have to do committee meetings today. But I did want to say good morning, welcome to Fairfax County, welcome, welcome, welcome. Remember one thing, we're all one. It's one Fairfax, yes, but it's one family, and we really need to move this forward. We are here for you, and I hope you are here for us, because we all have to make it work together. Thank you for this opportunity. Please have a great day, and if Michael doesn't feed you well, 1-800 call Brian. I see you, Gwen. I see you. You got that? All right? But thank you so much for being here today. It's a very important topic, and we have to come up with new strategy to ensure that we can afford each and every one a livable, workable place. Tom Fleetwood, you hear me? Yes, Brian, I hear you. All right, guys, have a great day, and thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Michael, thank you for giving me this opportunity to welcome the group. All right, I'm going that way.
I guess you all now can appreciate why he is the county executive and the leader of and the admiral of this ship. Thank you so much, County Executive Hill. Our first speaker this morning is a leader at the state level. The Honorable Delegate Michelle Maldonado is the consummate public servant as well as leader. Delegate Maldonado has fought tirelessly to unite people and to find solutions to today's most pressing challenges. I can share with you personally, this young lady, she is just all over the place throughout the Commonwealth, up and down 95, going to several meetings, conferences, meeting with individual residents to try to help them navigate whatever issues and problems they may face. She is the type of delegate and leader that we really need in the State House working on our behalf. So will you please help me welcome the Honorable Delegate Michelle Maldonado.
Wow, good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Good to see you up bright and early while the sun is still shining. We've got some liquid gold outside to have as our wake-up beverage. Thank you for having me this morning. It's very funny. Like the executive, I come before you a little heavier and when my hair was longer when I was younger, but yet still also a Knicks fan. So, and still waiting for them to win more championships. So we wanted to share with you some of the things that we've been doing at the state level. And one thing that I think is a resounding message that will probably be threaded throughout the day is something that I believe in strongly. In fact, I'm often heard saying it, and it is one community, one commonwealth. And you heard our county executive say that we are one. And I represent District 20, which is a little further west. It includes parts of the western end of Prince William County, the cities of Manassas and Manassas Park. And I also have the great pleasure of serving over the last couple of years as our caucus's chair for our Affordable Housing Policy Committee. And each year, I do our annual regional housing forum, which includes the cities and the county in my district. And we just had one our annual forum last Thursday. And I mention that because a lot of the conversations and the comments that we heard there are the same ones that we hear in Fairfax, the same ones we hear in Alexandria. And we're going to go through a couple of things. First, I want to share with you a little bit about what we actually got to pass. It's just a couple of highlights of 5 or 6 bills, and some key bills that we didn't get to pass. And then looking at the context of how do we move forward with what's happening at the federal level. The good news is that the delegate that represents this area is David Bulova, who does an amazing job of chairing our emergency committee to address the impacts of federal workforce and funding reductions. So I will talk about that a little bit. So let's get started. One of the things that we have seen over time is how do we address this sort of components of attainable housing, affordable housing, and what falls in the spectrum of that. And we have tried many things. You know, everybody knows that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, some things we do need to continue to do, but there is a call in this moment for us to think more creatively and collaboratively about how we might want to reimagine how we address the housing crisis that not only Fairfax County is in, not only the Commonwealth of Virginia is in, but the entire nation. And so we've looked at things like comprehensive assessments. How do we, maybe we're doing resource and partnerships with Navaja or other organizations and advocacy groups. We need to make sure we're including diverse stakeholders to be at the table. And this means residents, it means the advocacy groups, and it also means developers and others. Because without those perspectives at the table, it makes it very hard to create a 360 holistic solution. We have to have an equity-focused strategy. So some of you may not know parts of my backstory, but as a child, I experienced both housing and food insecurity, and I lived in a camping trailer for part of my elementary school years. Not a mobile home, but an actual camping trailer. And a lot of times when we talk about housing, we talk about folks in the missing middle. We talk about folks in the lower economic income part of our spectrum, but we don't talk about folks in mobile home communities. We don't really talk about the homeless or unhoused because we think of those as separate issues, but it's part of the continuum of safe and healthy housing that everybody should have. I do not believe that housing is a privilege. I believe it is a right, and it impacts generations. When you don't have a safe place to put your head at night, as a parent or a caretaker of children, it's impossible to focus on work. It's impossible to focus on many things because you're so worried about how do I care for these children. And you yourself individually don't have a place, it is hard to focus. And think for children, it is hard to learn. So we have these cascading ripples, and we must make sure that we're looking at equitable solutions. And so many people get confused about the difference between equality and equity, and I'm here to tell you that some things don't need to be equal because some people have different needs, right? We need equity, which means giving people what they need to be able to bring them up and be able to be competitive with everyone else, to be able to be thriving and flourishing like everyone else. And we need to have targeted interventions. A lot of these things we're already doing, and so what we're being asked to do in these moments is to reflect on how we're doing those and what we need to lean into more or what we might need to co-create together. And then finally, as we do them, we have this obligation, this duty to continuously monitor, assess, reassess, and evolve these systems and frameworks. A lot of our systems around housing have their origin in racial and racist ideologies and platforms. And the implications of them still take effect today, even though people have forgotten about why they were constructed in the first place. And so those ills, those unintended modern ripples, are things that we have to address as well. So I want to tell you about a couple of bills that did pass, because we have worked hard for several sessions. I was elected in 2021, and we certainly have been working on housing issues as long as I've been there, but it goes well before that. Delegate David Bulova, Delegate Betsy Carr, Delegate Marcia Price, and myself, and several others, we are steadfast focused on ways to address housing, and some are minor changes and tweaks, and some are bigger and bolder. And I've had the pleasure and the challenge of serving in both, having our caucus be in the minority and be in the majority. So different administrations address this issue, this challenge, differently. And some are more receptive than others because there are platform ideologies. I think most people understand that we have a need for housing, whether we're in rural communities, suburban, exurban, urban, but not everybody agrees on the execution and the solution. So that's part of what the job is, and that's hard, trying to figure out where is the common ground that we can move forward. So a couple of these that I think are interesting and worth noting are some tax-related pieces. Now, in the legislature, there are two primary ways that we have as delegates and senators to move things forward. It's to draft a bill that hopefully becomes law, or, to bring forward a budget amendment. So we can bring forward a budget amendment that's not attached to a law, but shifts things and allocates money. And in Virginia, we have a biennial budget. It lasts for 2 years, as the name suggests. And the first year, so this is the last year of our biennial budget. This year, we proposed a number of amendments. Next year, we'll be looking at recreating a whole new budget again, which I think is very exciting because there will be lots of things that are new. There will be a new governor. We'll see what happens in the House races as well, and we'll see how that aligns with the efforts around housing and other issues that are really pressing upon our communities and our families at the moment. So some tax legislation, two in particular, were helping to with expense report forms and sessions and owners to be completed prior to assessments. This has to do with the value of property. And then revise portions of local property tax exemptions and deferral. So a lot of times there are challenges with paying the property taxes. I don't know about how you feel, but I believe where I live in Manassas Park, we have the highest real estate taxes in the Commonwealth, which is one of the biggest challenges that we have. In Manassas Park, unlike Fairfax, is only about 3 square miles. So you can imagine the challenges of trying to generate commercial revenue and some other things that often in other localities are able to offset some of the taxes. Rental agreement notices. This is an interesting one. This is like a part 2 follow-on. This was brought by Delegate Adele McClure, who's in our freshman class. It follows a piece of legislation that my team and I brought forward in 23, and that was because we were finding a couple of things. Landlords were renewing rental leases but not telling people until the very last minute, essentially, what the new rent amount was. Now, if anybody's a renter in this room, you know that being at the end of your lease and having 2 weeks left in the lease to renew and coming back and saying, sure, you can renew, absolutely, but the rent's gonna go up $500, or the rent's gonna go, that's huge for people to have to take. So in 2023, we passed a law that landlords have to notify folks 60 days prior to the end of a lease term to let them know if there is an increase in rent, and if so, how much. This bill that passed this time is the other part of that. It's saying if you're going to cancel it, you've got to give them 60 days. Because who can find, 60 days is not enough. I tried for 90. The compromise ended up being 60. But who can find a new place to live in 2 weeks? In this market, it's extremely hard. So that was a sort of bookend way to help address some of that. The other piece is around early terminations for those who have been victims of domestic violence or stalking or any of those things. We have seen a number of instances that is heartbreaking where people have been the victims of these crimes and their landlords won't allow them to get out of the lease so they can leave and move to a safer location, a safer housing situation. So they will be able to now. Land trust definition, sort of looking at how we do need to think about how do we define land ordinances, how do we define these things so that we have more flexibility to be able to build, to buy, to lease land for the purposes of incorporating inclusionary housing that is attainable and affordable for all. And that goes with the second to last bullet, which is around giving permission. This one was brought by Delegate Betsy Carr, who I referenced earlier, and it is allowing localities to be able to create diverse housing plans and to consider things like tiny homes, to consider mobile home developments, to consider more dense or smaller homes. So when I first started buying home, when I bought my first home in the late 90s, it was called a starter home. It was 1,200 square feet. We don't build a lot of those now. And it makes it very hard for people to start out. And because our inventory is compressed, because interest rates are high, the people who were in some of the larger homes aren't moving because they can't get enough the bang for their buck to move somewhere else. And so because they're staying in place, the people who would naturally move up out of the rental can't move into starter homes, can't move into bigger homes as they grow families. So we have a compression issue based on a lack of inventory. There are those things that didn't pass that are just as important as the things that did pass. And this one in particular, I think would have been amazing. And it is a rental assisted pilot program that would have allowed us to be able to give funding for households that met certain criteria in terms of their income, but also had children in the home to help them be able to sustain their housing. So we hear a lot about, when we talk about affordable housing, the focus is often on getting people into the homes. But there's a lot of struggle with keeping people in them. And so there's housing access, and then there's housing sustainability. And this would have really helped as a pilot. It would have sunset in 28, but it would help us understand, is this an effective, creative way to help address some of the problems, particularly with our children who are in really vulnerable situations. The second one that did not pass, when I say these, they either didn't pass out of committee, the House, or were vetoed by the governor, is the preservation of affordable housing. And this one, it would have established a framework where localities would have the first right of refusal to require publicly supported lands to preserve them for affordable housing. And it would do it for a period of a decade and a half to give legs and efforts and access for the community. A second pilot that would have been really, I think, was forward thinking was our housing production pilot program. And that's a zoning program that would require localities to allow by right. So if you're not familiar with what that means, is that in many localities, I use Prince William County, for example, in the city of Manassas. In Prince William County, there's a large conversation, which I'm sure some of you may have heard about, around data centers. And in the county, the erection and the approval of data centers must be done through the Board of County Supervisors. So they have to petition, they have to go through a lot of steps to get permission. In the city of Manassas, a lot of the zoned places have by right zoning, which means they don't have to go through that process. It's zoned for these uses that include the operation of data centers. So they can just say, we're buying this land, and boom, oh my gosh, there is a data center. So because there is such challenge around zoning issues, and I want to pause here for a moment, because part of the housing issues that we hear all the time around the difficulty and the protracted timeline that it takes for the zoning pieces, zoning and permit pieces for housing. When the timeline gets stretched, that costs developers more, which is not an incentive to sort of play in this game. There also is a little known fact that by time a developer gets to a county or a city or a town to ask to be considered for a particular development, they've already sunk in several $100,000 to $1 million because they've got to do all the assessments. And so so they're carrying that, and then they might have, by time they actually get to break down ground, they may have been carrying all of that for a good 2 years. And so the longer it takes, the more it costs the developer, which means that cost then gets passed down to the purchaser, which means our housing prices get higher. So I think there's opportunity and there's room for us to think about what that looks like. There's also the land use zoning, which allows localities to provide affordable housing development units. There are some restrictions around where you can put, mother-in-law suites, ADUs, all of those things. So looking, how do we address that? And this last one is my bill because, as I mentioned earlier, we don't often think of the mobile home community. And this was a simple fix. In Virginia, last year, we passed a law, very simple, that said if you are a renter and there are fees listed in the agreement, those fees can't be buried in the rental contract. You have to put them up front so when they open it, they can see what all the fees are. Already law. I did not pass that one, but I did vote for it. And I'm raising it because we have two separate acts. We've got one for mobile homes, and we've got one Landlord-Tenant Act, which is the one everybody thinks about. So what happened was that requirement, that clarity and transparency, only applied to people who had the ability to rent apartments, single-family homes, but not if you rented a mobile home. So I brought forward a bill that made current law also apply to renters of mobile homes. And because of the swings in our climate and the adverse climate conditions that we're hearing, increased flooding, for example, I incorporated a provision and worked with our mobile home community, our modular sort of homes industry. We were all on board, worked with Virginia Poverty Law Center to include an expansion and augmentation of the languages already included in mobile home renter agreements that told people that their homeowner's insurance may not cover flooding and where they can get that information. That bill sadly was vetoed, and we don't know why. But we will bring it back next session. So let me just say a couple of things. We have an opportunity in this moment to come together. Historically, we've worked in silos. This city has done this county has done that, and that town has done X. And those days are over. This is an all hands on deck, everybody together moment where we can perhaps co-create things that would allow for us to provide and pull down block funding, have cohesive strategies across regions. And I'm so proud to say that the Speaker of the House, Speaker Don Scott, established our emergency committee on federal workforce and funding reductions. It was the first in the country to establish such a committee to be able to look at the impacts of what's happening at the federal level on Virginians, not just sort of families, but businesses, the housing sector. And Delegate David Bulova is the chair of that committee. He knows what he's doing, and he's doing a great job. The thing that's really important to know is sort of what the scope and purpose of this committee is, because we're all working for everybody in this room to figure out at the end of these sort of series of meetings to produce recommendations of things we can do right now, recommendations of things that we can bring into the 2026 legislative session to help. So the scope is to collect and analyze data on the workforce and funding cuts. We're also supposed to assess the likely economic and budgetary impact on Virginia, because a lot of our budget is tied to federal funding. So we have to figure out, what do we do if we don't have federal matching dollars? What does that mean for Virginia? Where does that money come from? And if we can't get that money, what has to go? That's an untenable situation to have to be in, because we all feel very passionately about what's important. And then we also do a really good job in this committee. David brings together a very diverse stakeholder group. So we've heard from agencies. These meetings happen. They are live streamed. You can go in person. I encourage you to visit the Virginia General Assembly website and look up the committee to look at some of the past recordings of the meetings, so you can see the kinds of things that are coming to the surface and what people are concerned about. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is to issue policy recommendations and legislative opportunities along with budget. We've had several meetings. We have 3 meetings already. We kicked it off on the last day of session, Saturday, February 22nd, with the first meeting. We had a meeting, and that was in Richmond. In April, we had another meeting last week, May 12th. Is that last week? They all feels like it runs together. We had another meeting, and the next meeting is going to be June 20th, and I think that's going to be in the Norfolk area. So it goes around the country. The May meeting was in Southwest, the April meeting was in Northern Virginia, and the February meeting was in Richmond. And so when all of that is wrapped up, we'll be looking at concrete recommendations to move forward. I'm very excited about that, because it has to be actionable, and it has to be something that we can do. So we will be looking at that. We know that there are impacts on federal employees. We have about just under 145,000 federal folks who are employed by the federal government, but that number does not reflect the broader ecosystem of people employed or impacted by the federal government. We've got federal contractors. And so when you cascade out, that number balloons to anywhere between 300,000 and 400,000. And so we know that if those folks don't have work, we are looking at people leaving the Commonwealth potentially who don't find other employment opportunities. But it's not just about work. There is a direct impact on housing. People won't necessarily be able to purchase homes. They may run into challenges paying for rent or paying mortgage. There are a number of ways where we may start to see some rippling effects. And the size of that is not yet known fully. We do know that about 10% reduction in the workforce could lead to about a $260 million impact on our state revenues. So we're looking at very large portions of funding that can impact what our state government is able to do. And even when we look at a real estate perspective, we know that federal dollars, federal contractors, and government lease about 4 million square feet of office in the county of Fairfax alone. If those leases aren't continued because of the significant downsizing, what does that do in the localities in that market? The cascading effect, as I also mentioned, there's also real concerns around Medicaid and people benefiting from that. And we have all over Virginia done incredible work to make sure people in the most need have access. We've expanded Medicaid access. And so I think you all can see the challenges that go far beyond housing, but housing is right there in the center. Housing is always in the center of everything. And one thing that's really interesting that we have to think about going forward is, I'm going to start with the last one on the left side, is this thing called the Dillon Rule. Now, in Virginia and some other states, something called the Dillon Rule exists. It was not created by somebody in Virginia, but a judge in the Midwest. And their reason for establishing it was because they were trying to mitigate fraud and all kinds of bad behavior happening at local levels. And the Dillon Rule says that the localities only have the authority that the state gives them. So we are in a Dillon Rule state. So some of the biggest autonomy and authority that localities have is around their own taxes, like real estate taxes and things like that, the way they develop land. Now, there is a tension here because we are growing in an increasing crisis, and we're seeing localities try to address this, starting to address this rule. Some are making really great strides, and others have not taken action yet. And so we're left in a spot in this moment trying to figure out, what do we do? Do we change this to make sure that localities have more incentive to take action more immediately and provide the resources? Because one thing I'm not a fan of is unfunded mandates, which means the state will say, go do this. I know it costs $5 million, but figure it out. Nobody likes that. But we do have to figure out, how do we address this problem together? So there's a Dillon rule tension. Does the state require localities to take more action, or does the state keep its hands off and say, okay, hopefully you'll do more, or keep going where you are? And I think the answer may be a little bit of both, that we are in new times and we have to figure out a way to come together and figure out how to crack this nut. So you will start to see pieces of legislation that lean toward more direction for localities. And the first example of that is the SB 975, the last bullet point that you see on the right column, that was brought by Senator Van Valkenburg. And that piece of legislation required localities to increase its affordable housing stock by 5% year over year over a 5-year period, with exceptions. There were reasonable exceptions. So I referenced Manassas Park earlier today, that's only about 3 square miles. They don't have room, they don't have space to do that. So there are limitations and workarounds around this, but you can see that's a different approach. That switches up the Dillon rule, and it can be perceived at the local level as taking away power as opposed to increasing housing stock, right? Both can be true at the same time. So then we have this whole concept of NIMBY, YIMBY, and YIGBY, which is relatively new. So NIMBY, for those who may not be aware, is not in my backyard. YIMBY is yes in my backyard, and YIGBY is yes in God's backyard. Because more of our faith-based communities have land that they want to develop to provide affordable housing. So that is relatively recent on the horizon, where a lot of our faith-based communities, a large sort of leader in that space is Voice, who has been trying to work with localities to be able to develop land and offer affordable housing. Those tensions are always there. And there are people who really want to help, and then there are people like, I want to help, but I just don't want it next to me. And this is very common. So there's always striking that balance. The other piece we've already talked about is zoning and permitting requirements, and I don't think I need to go through that again, but we do need to figure out how to make the process more streamlined so that we don't escalate the pricing and costs that then get transferred to home buyers. You know, in one of my communities, they were building what they thought were affordable homes, and I literally went to the developer and asked, affordable for whom? And they're like, well, it's affordable by design. And I said, starting at $650 is not affordable. It's not affordable for a teacher like my husband, despite what people think. State representatives don't get paid a lot of money, whereas $17,000 and $18,000 and change. Like, I don't know who teachers, law enforcement, paramedics, nurses, who can afford that by themselves. And so I'm always asking the question, when you say affordable by design, I'm asking the question, affordable for whom? And is it really addressing the issue we have? So there are things that we can do. Now, I said, I made a quick comment earlier before that part of the challenge is that we hyper-focus on getting people in the homes, but we don't do a lot to help keep them in the homes. There are programs, but they're not equally weighted, right? And so sometimes it can feel like people are just left and they don't know where to go. Some of it is communication, helping them see what local resources help keep them in the homes. But we have housing trust funds. We hear about those all the time. Some localities have them. We fund it at the state level. What we don't have is a housing sustainability fund. And we often don't have housing sustainability funds at local level. So that's another place where there could be something to explore. And then I've already talked about SB 975. So as we wrap up, I just want to say we have multiple things that we need to do all at the same time. People say all the time, I can chew gum and walk at the same time. Guess what? This is one of those times where we've got to do all of that at the same time together. We've got to collaborate. We've got to make sure we're not forgetting about tenant protections as we work, because not everybody owns a home, right? And even those who do, they need protections. But people who are renters can be particularly vulnerable, especially if they're on the line, on the margins. And then looking at some of the creative ways to increase supply. So I want to close with this. I want to let you know, like, what does it look like when you are trying to bring ideas to a legislator to say, I've got this great idea. What if we just did this? Or how about we have this problem and I'm not sure how to fix it. Can you help? Can you write a law to help us do X? Can you fund this program at the state level? Here's the kind of general timeline how we work. So I started with where we are now, May, August. This is sort of what we look at as pre-session. We're starting to have conversations with people. What do we need? What do I as a legislator, this is the royal I, the royal we, what do we need to do to help address some of the pain points on the ground? So we spend a lot of time doing that. And then by September, October, we're trying to finalize those pieces of legislation and budget amendments. And then come November, at the end of November, we have to submit through our state portal our pre-file briefings for the legislation, for the bills that we want to carry. And then we have a little bit of time to make some edits. And then in December, that's where we do the edits. And then January through March, there is a window after in January where we can bring, I think, up to a few more bills, but it's very hard. You can imagine there's a lot that goes into vetting a bill, lots of conversations with advocacy groups, local governments, other legislators. There's a lot that goes in to make somebody comfortable to feel like I can bring this bill forward. So when people come at the last minute, it's very hard to vet them, and then you're left in session when everybody is focused on presenting their bills, trying to get consensus for something they've never heard of before. So it's not that it can't be done. We do it all the time. It's just harder. So January through March or January through February, depending on whether it's a short year or a long year. And people are often surprised to know that in Virginia, if it's a year ending in an odd number, our session is a short session. It's 45 days. So this year we went from January to February 22nd. If it's a year ending in an even number, we have a long session. So we'll have a long session in 2026 that is 60 days. We go from January to mid-March. And then finally, July 1, whatever we've passed and has been signed becomes effective goes into law along with the budget. And the only exception to that is if there's a delayed enactment, the law itself says this doesn't become effective until X date, Y date in the future, or it's got what's called a reenactment clause, which says it passed, but it has to come back again next session to pass again before it actually becomes law. So those are the ways that we can do that. And I encourage you to please reach out to your delegates, your senators. Your senator is Stella Pekarsky. Your delegate, as I've said several times, is David Bulova. And members who are focused on housing. So if there are specialty areas that you really care about, you can reach out to those folks too. But your delegate and your senator are so here and present and active in your community that you are in really good hands. So I want to thank you, and I'm so glad that we are in this together, and I'm so glad that all of you care as much as you do about helping make things better for our communities. Thank you.
In planning for this program, we wanted someone with the expertise and knowledge who could address the overriding legal challenges impacting our communities. We were quite fortunate in finding Ms. Zola Henson. Ms. Henson is a partner in the law firm of Relman and Colfax. This is the leading law firm in the nation dedicated to addressing and handling civil rights issues. They're like the vanguard in protecting civil rights and enforcing our nation's civil rights laws. And she's one of the main partners there that's on the front line, making sure that, or to hold these bad actors accountable for some of the transgressions and things that they try to do to erode our civil rights. So at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you my new friend, Mrs. Ola Henson.
First of all, does this mic work? I think we couldn't check. Okay, great. We couldn't do a mic check. First of all, thank you, Barksdale, for that very generous introduction. I feel like I may have gotten a promotion in there, which I appreciate. I'll tell everybody back at work. When I was starting to get ready for today, I was trying to figure out how to approach this speech, this address, whatever this is, and I checked in with Barksdale, and he said essentially, hey, like, what would be useful for me to talk about? And he said, the erosion of civil rights occurring and what actions we can all take to safeguard and survive these actions. And I thought, that's straightforward and simple, a discrete topic that I can easily answer in 15 minutes. And I'll just give a little bit of a disclaimer as I get started that I don't speak on behalf of Fairfax County or the state of Virginia or any governmental body. I don't even speak on behalf of Relman Colfax. I'm speaking only on behalf of myself. And so if you want to get mad at me, just get mad at me as an individual. Anyways, as I was wrestling with this question, I realized it connected to two things. The first is a question I'm facing, and maybe we're all facing in our daily lives. And the second relates to Oprah Winfrey. And I promise there is a connection here. I saw some video a couple of weeks ago where Oprah was talking about how you should go through challenging times. And she said, we should all be focusing on doing the next right thing. And the idea is that when you're facing something challenging, you can't always figure out the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 steps. You can't necessarily figure out what you're going to be doing in 5 years or 10 years. So focus on doing the thing right now. What is the thing we can do today to make things better? So break it down one step at a time. And I've been thinking about that a lot in the past few months. What is the next right thing to do? Because to be honest, if I think, how do we protect civil rights for the next 20 or 30 years? Or how do we face this huge issue that's in front of us right now? I get overwhelmed. And even figuring out what do I do today and tomorrow to advance justice can be a challenging question. Given the uncertainty with the government, but also with like the climate, the economy, even violence and conflict around the world. So as I've been trying to make that decision in my life and my work, I've repeatedly come across what I think are the same two fallacies that are in some ways are exactly opposite to each other, but maybe get us stuck in the same place. On the one hand, I think we've all seen and maybe even struggled with really coming to terms with what's been happening over the past few months, right? There's a desire to pretend that everything is okay. There is a desire to pretend that this is a normal presidency and to refuse to engage with the crisis that we're facing. And on the other hand, I've seen a lot of panic and a lot of misinformation, often from people who I think share a lot of the same values with me. And I think it's important to understand this administration's intention, but I also think that doomerism and despair can overwhelm and paralyze us. So while these fallacies are opposite approaches, I think they often get us stuck in the same place, inaction, right? If we refuse to believe anything has changed, we're not going to take action to respond to the moment before us. And if we believe change is useless and impossible, we're going to do the same thing, right? Which is we're going to do nothing. So today I'm going to try my hand at an imperfect, flawed, individual attempt to answer this question. What do we do today? What is our next right move? Big picture, first I think we need to face where we are. If you're trying to navigate to a new location, right, first you need to find yourself on the map. If we're trying to find our way to a more just future, we need to appreciate what we're facing right now. Second, we need to look at the tools available to us. Now, I'm going to focus on legal tools, partly because I'm a lawyer, but also because misinformation and fear that's out there can lead us to believe that certain tools that actually are still available to us aren't. And third, I'm going to offer a few suggestions, and they're really incomplete, of what people in this room can do. So first of all, where are we? I suspect everyone in this room is aware about the erosion of civil rights that's taking place under the Trump administration, right? It's hard not to be in general, and particularly in this part of the world. In case it wasn't clear before, it's very obvious this administration does not care about equality or equity, and that many institutions, including journalists, universities, and companies who just a few years ago were shouting Black Lives Matter, are unwilling to hold this administration accountable and are turning their backs on values they have previously espoused. But to be honest, I actually think it's more insidious than that. It's not just an attack on civil rights. It's the weaponization of civil rights laws themselves and a perversion of the language and logic that underlie them. So we see this, for example, in news reports that the Civil Rights Division is going to abandon basically all of its enforcement and focus on voter fraud, which doesn't really happen. We see it in this administration's recent attack on disparate impact as a legal theory. And we see it in the government's moving to dissolve a consent decree designed to prevent the dumping of raw sewage in majority Black neighborhoods in Lowndes County, Alabama, on the grounds that it is, quote, illegal DEI. This framing perverts the language of civil rights. It treats attempts to make the world more equitable as discrimination. And it assumes that the world should be exclusively for a really small set of people, and that attempts at equity or advancement for anyone else are attempting to take away from that small group something that they are sort of entitled to. I think that what this tells us is that the federal government isn't just not going to enforce civil rights laws. It is going to use those laws to attack people who are actually seeking justice. I think everyone in this room has probably heard this famous line from Dr. King, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And I think that's true, but I think it's sometimes treated in a really facile way, right? It's just gonna happen. Things are just gonna get better inevitably. The pendulum is just gonna swing back kind of on its own. And that I do disagree with. I think right now, the administration is moving us towards a future that not only revives the worst parts of our history, but also moves us into something that we haven't seen before, which is autocracy and authoritarianism. I think we need to understand that the future is not inevitably necessarily better, and that if the arc bends towards justice, it's because people like the people in this room have gotten together and fought really, really hard to bend that arc. Okay, so now I've depressed everyone. What are the tools that we have to make this better? And again, I'm going to be focusing on legal tools here, partly because of my own expertise and of the request today. First, I really want to flag that the administration can do a lot, but all the federal civil rights laws that existed before Trump still exist. We still have those tools, despite announcements from the administration designed to make us think that we don't have them, right? These laws include the Fair Housing Act, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, Title VII, which prohibits discrimination in employment, Title II, which prohibits discrimination sort of in public accommodations, so facilities used by the public at large, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, among others. And that means that you have a right, and everyone here has the right, to not be discriminated against on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, familial status, or disability. These protections still apply. And I don't want to downplay what the administration has done here. The federal government is, for all intents and purposes, no longer engaging in civil rights enforcement. It has also attempted to defund private groups like fair housing organizations that are working to combat discrimination and segregation in this country. And the administration has started to attack consent decrees and court decisions and settlements to prevent, and even nonprofits, to prevent others from seeking to enforce civil rights laws. But I also think it's pretty clear that the government is basically trying to gaslight us into thinking it's doing even more than it has the power to do. So here's an admittedly a bit of a law nerdy example, but a few weeks ago in this bevy of executive orders from the White House issued an EO stating that the federal government would no longer recognize disparate impact as a legal theory. And people may know, but just to be clear, under a disparate impact legal theory, civil rights laws prohibit actions that appear to be non-discriminatory on their face, but have an unnecessary disparate impact. So they disproportionately harm people who share race, sex, or another protected characteristic without a good reason. This doesn't mean civil rights laws prohibit all policies or actions that have a disparate impact. Actions that have a disparate impact are lawful if they are supported by a legitimate business need and there are no less discriminatory alternatives. So the White House comes out with this executive order, and what I've seen is lots of people in the civil rights community saying disparate impact is dead, we can't use it anymore, like we have to abandon all these cases. That's not true. He can't do it. The president does not have the power to change existing case law on disparate impact. The Supreme Court has recognized its validity under Title VII since 1971 and under the Fair Housing Act since 2015. And this matters because I think the administration is doing this on purpose to confuse us. It's trying to get the civil rights community to back away from disparate impact by acting like it has the power to take it from us. And if we stop using a tool because we are confused or because we are intimidated, that's the same thing, right, as if they actually took it from us. By giving it up, they win. So what can we do? I think the biggest thing is A, enforce the laws to the best of our ability, and B, make sure people know what their rights are, right? We can combat the rampant misinformation that's out there and that unfortunately is sometimes circulated by people on the same side as us. We can also share resources and tools and explainers so we aren't all having to figure this out on our own. And I promise I didn't do this on purpose, but at the risk of craven self-promotion, my firm does have an explainer on the disparate impact executive order that you can find on our website. In addition to federal civil rights laws, we have laws that might not expressly prohibit discrimination, but can be used as tools for equity. And I would really point to consumer protection laws like the Truth in Lending Act or state UDAP laws, unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices laws that can be used to combat predatory schemes. In many cases, these schemes would also be, you could also bring civil rights claims against them under what's called a reverse redlining theory. But the advantage of a law like the Truth in Lending Act is that it requires certain disclosures on its face. And you can establish liability without a showing of discriminatory intent or impact. You can also use them to supplement civil rights laws. I'm aware of a case in Minnesota about a targeting of the state's Somali Muslim population with a predatory product where they're bringing both consumer protection and state civil rights claims. A second set of tools allows us to hold the administration's feet to the fire when they attempt to change the rules in ways that are illegal or arbitrary. So one thing we've seen time and time again with this administration is that they have intentionally chosen to go about things in ways that are illegal, either because they don't have the power to do what they want to do or because they want to move quickly. So they've cut funding from fair housing organizations, ostensibly at the direction of DOJ. They've announced that they plan to withdraw regulations without going through a legally required period of notifying the public and receiving public comments. And again, I think the strategy here is just to do a lot of stuff to overwhelm us and then make it difficult to fight them. So I think a lot of people over the past few months have learned about a little law called the Administrative Procedures Act. This is one of these things like one of the nerdiest classes in law school, and all of a sudden it's all over the news. Basically, it sets guardrails on actions that agencies can take. Agencies have a ton of discretion, but if they set a regulation or change a policy, they have to explain what they're doing, and that explanation has to be reasonable and adequate. I'll be honest, this is a pretty low standard, and yet court after court has held that the Trump administration isn't meeting it. So as a result, we've seen cases being brought to challenge, for example, DOJ's access to private data at various agencies, the arbitrary terminations of grant funds and employment at agencies, and the administration's use of expedited removal. And that's separate from many other lawsuits challenging denials of due process, the failure to recognize birthright citizenship, and illegal deportations. It's more than 240 lawsuits at this point have been brought against the Trump administration. I don't want to exaggerate what these lawsuits can do. In many cases, agencies will be able to do pretty horrible things if they go through the correct process. But it's also important for the rule of law that they follow the existing rules. And it's important to slow them down, right? To allow the community time to organize and to respond, and to throw sand in the gears of authoritarianism. And third legal tool is state and local laws, some of which are actually stronger and more robust and more detailed than federal laws. So in DC, for example, the Human Rights Act protects 23 separate protected classes. It protects race or characteristics like race, national origin, and disability that we might be familiar with under federal law, but it also protects sexual orientation and gender identity, genetic information, unhoused status, and status as a victim or family member of a victim of domestic violence, among others. And here in Virginia, the Virginia Fair Housing Law and Virginia Human Rights Act protect against discrimination on the basis of pregnancy and childbirth, gender identity, marital status, and military status, again, among other protections. So even in the best of times, I'll say I think the civil rights community should be paying way more attention to these state laws because they can be really helpful and robust protections. And now they're crucial, right? Because Congress can't change them, right? This is much more local, and these are things that we can have a really direct impact on. At the same time, I don't think we should be satisfied with these state civil rights laws. So DC, which is not a state, in DC, the statute of limitations for non-housing claims is just a year, right? So that's just not very much time. And I think one thing we can do is advocate with our state governments and with local governments to make these protections even stronger. So the third question I said I would ask or address today is, what can we do, right? What can people in government and local nonprofits do about all of this? And look, this is a big question, right? I'm not sure I can begin to answer it, but I'm going to give a few suggestions, a few options, a few things for folks to think about as you're trying to decide your next right move. First, you can hold the line, right? You can do your job. I realize this may be not that exciting, but right now it can feel hard to believe in our laws and our institutions when so many of them are failing us. And if you work for the government, I think it makes it all that more important that you continue to act with honesty and integrity. Government employees can work to ensure that their own programs are equitable, and we can all do our best to ramp up enforcement of state and local anti-discrimination laws. We can also work to make these laws stronger and to make clear to our elected officials that we believe in civil rights and think enforcement matters. If you work for a nonprofit, I think it's incredibly important not to back away from our demands right now. Because again, if we believe we don't have rights, if we act like we don't have rights, we don't have those rights. They have won that territory. The reality is, in the short term, I think maybe we're not going to make a ton of gains, right? Maybe we're bracing ourselves against losses. But preventing losses matters. Every person you help matters, right? If you're preventing a landlord from discriminating with impunity, that matters not just to the individual that you're helping, but it sends a message to other landlords that, yeah, maybe the federal government isn't doing what it should right now, but somebody's paying attention. They can't just get away with this stuff. Maybe it'll help to keep some people in line. Second, you can build community. I think today is a great opportunity for folks to come together, both professionally and personally, to share resources and to learn. If there is strategy that one group or municipality has used, please share that. Right? We should be stealing from each other, right? We should be building on each other's ideas. Maybe that's how I'll put it. And I'll say, if folks have questions, particularly about housing discrimination or fair lending, please feel free to shoot me an email. I may or may not be able to help, but I'm always happy to talk with people. I think this stuff matters, and I'm happy to have a phone call. You can find my, I'm very Googleable, unfortunately, so you can find me online quite easily. But I also think there's community we should be building in our lives. And I'll admit, I'm not saying this so much as a civil rights lawyer or a law firm partner, as a person who's been reading a lot about this, but everything I've read about how we not only fight authoritarianism, but survive it says to get to know your neighbors, right? Organize a block party, take a meal to the family down the street that just had a baby, join a club or a book club or Friends of the Public Library or the PTA. We are much more likely to stand together if we know each other and if we see ourselves as part of a community. And third, to follow up on that, I think we need to practice solidarity, right? What this administration wants us to do is to sell each other out. They want us to hunker down and protect only our own. And we see that in a lot of their actions, right? They illegally deport hundreds of Venezuelans and label them all gang members. And they're doing that because they think no one's going to care. They are attacking trans youth, and RFK Jr. has said he wants to put together a database of autistic people. They are attacking these groups because they believe other people will abandon them. And we can't do that. We can't do it for moral reasons, but I also think we can't do it for purely selfish reasons. I think probably people have heard the poem, First They Came, which is, first they came for the communists and I did not speak out. Well, it ends with, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me, rather. So right now, I think it's time for those of us who are citizens to reach out to our immigrant neighbors, for straight folks to reach out to their queer and trans neighbors, for able-bodied folks to reach out to their disabled neighbors. Are there ways that issues or communities have been siloed, and we can build bridges and break down those walls to make our movements even stronger? Is there an organization, maybe you work at a housing organization and there's an immigrant organization that you're sort of aware of and haven't reached out to. Maybe it's a good time to give them a call and see about bridges that can be built and ways you guys can work together. And finally, keep fighting. And I'm saying that as much for myself as for you. Don't give up. Countries do come out of times of regression and authoritarianism, and we can reverse this, but it's going to take time. An activist named Mariame Kaba is someone that I have followed for many years, and one of her most famous sayings, to the extent that there are famous activists in the world, is hope is a discipline. And hope here is not optimism. It's not a belief that everything is inevitably going to be okay or get better or the pendulum's going to swing back. Instead, it's a belief that through our choices and our actions, we can build a better, more just world. And when she talks about a discipline, she means a discipline like prayer or meditation, right? It's a thing you wake up every day and choose. So I'm personally working to practice the discipline of hope so that I can keep fighting, so that I can choose to be in this fight every single day. Ultimately, I think we need to recognize that this fight does require all of us, and it requires all of us to keep fighting. And at the same time, I think we can all get overwhelmed, right? There's so many horrible things happening in the world. So maybe it's carve out that thing that you're working on, get up every day and keep working on that thing, and then rest, right? So you can get up and fight again tomorrow. I want to conclude just by thanking everybody in this room. I know Barksdale let us know yesterday there were 145 RSVPs, and I know everyone's not necessarily here specifically for the fair housing issues or the civil rights issues, but I think it's incredible that so many people in this region care about housing. And so it's giving me hope today, helping me practice that discipline of hope to see so many people show up to make sure people in this area have safe, affordable housing and the civil rights that we all deserve. Thank you.
Can we give another round of applause for Ms. Henson? I know we had to take a quick break, but it was certainly well worth the wait. At least I know and feel that way. So thank you again so much for your time and for sharing with us today. Our next speaker has served the Commonwealth in the General Assembly since 2023. The Honorable Delegate Daniel Helmer has spent his life fighting for democracy, freedom, and the underserved. First as a soldier fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Korea, and then as a legislator. So I'm hoping that each and every one of you will help me welcome, well, let me just stop for a moment to pause. Delegate Helmer, he's so busy today that he was not able to be present with us, but he certainly wanted to take part in this program, so he asked that we would Zoom him in from, I think, in New York City. Is Delegate Helmer available?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we hear you. First of all, I certainly want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy there, working on behalf of the residents here in the Commonwealth and certainly here in Northern Virginia. So without further ado, I'm going to let you take it away. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so sorry that I can't be in person with you today, but this was such an important topic that I felt it just compelling to make sure that I got to speak with you. So thank you all for being a part of this. I do think the title of Making Nova Resilient is incredibly important because it is hard for us to be resilient. It is hard for us to come back from what is happening at a national level right now if housing is not affordable. And I know in communities across Fairfax County, many of us are worried about how much income is being taken up by the rent, how unaffordable it has become to buy a home, how when we think about not just for our families, but for our children, what does it look like to live in Fairfax or Prince William or Loudoun County or Arlington or Alexandria in the coming years? We're very, very worried that just a basic place to live is going to be out of reach. And I want you to know that I'm a member of the House of Delegates, which means I represent a part of Southwest Fairfax County, but also it means that I have the capacity and often do get to travel around the state. And we are seeing pockets of inaffordability in places we never expected to. And so this is becoming a statewide issue in ways that many didn't anticipate. So this is incredibly important. And I do want to talk a little bit about what we have done and then what the opportunity space I think there is on the table in front of us. And then as the format allows, happy to address questions and things like that. So, we did make significant progress in the 2025 legislative session, even though I do think there's a lot of work to do. What we do know is that teachers, nurses, first responders, people with access to a middle-class, blue-collar job are increasingly finding it hard to live in Northern Virginia. Families are being pushed further out. They're spending more time in traffic and less time at home. Rents are rising. Homeownership is slipping further out of reach. And many of our longtime residents, including people who've worked here all their lives and expected to stay here in retirement, they're being displaced. The average home price today in Fairfax County is $750,000. When I bought my home, that is 50% higher than when I was starting my own family, journey here in Fairfax County when I was stationed here by the Army. It is, we think that about 350,000 people in Fairfax can't afford to own a home. And the time to act is now. And, the challenge in front of us is how do we lower the cost of ownership? How do we protect tenants from unfair practices by landlords? How do we expand, I think most importantly, the quantity of housing? Because as we expand the quantity of housing, I think we will get lower prices and more affordability. It's just very much a supply and demand issue. So in the last year, we did pass legislation that promotes affordable housing on nonprofit-owned land, removes red tape and financial barriers for nonprofit entities to create housing. We did require transparency in rent payment fees to make sure that we aren't adding junk fees and there aren't unnecessary costs or unanticipated costs. We created model policy that prevents discrimination to make sure that those who have made a mistake aren't prevented from getting housing. Again, the more accessible that we make housing, the better. And some of that, of course, was vetoed by the governor, and some of it we were able to move forward. But we are going to continue to fight for good policies. We have tried to standardize tax assessments for affordable housing to help reduce costs and keep rents down for those who need it the most. And I think that's a lot, but I also was disappointed, and this is where we need more local partnership in the efforts that we made this year. Senator Van Valkenburg and I brought forward a bill that would require localities to increase the housing stock by 7.5% over 5 years. I go back to the beginning when I said, everything else we do besides increasing the number of units available is nipping at the sides. We can't provide enough credits. We can't do anything beyond minor reforms in the absence of creating more housing. And I think it's incredibly important that we do it. I think what we heard from localities was concerns that we were making it harder for them to say no. And I want it to be in the position where we're making it easier for them to say yes and removing the barriers that sometimes get in the way of them providing new opportunities to expand housing. So we provided a bill that would have done that. The bill essentially worked by giving a lot of levers that localities could pull to increase the availability of housing. And if they pulled those levers and didn't hit the goal, it wasn't a big deal. But if they failed to pull those levers and didn't hit the goal, then it allowed an expedited process and a statewide process in order to approve new housing. I think when localities need that extra assistance from the state, we ought to provide that, and we ought to provide a platform and a way in which we can increase access to housing and increase the housing stock quickly. So with that, I think we've made progress. As I said, I think we have more to do. Senator Van Valkenburg and I are going to be back next year with continued work on this bill. We're really excited about the partnerships we're getting across Virginia, including in Northern Virginia, in order to move this forward and make sure that we increase the stock of housing, because I don't think there is anything we can do that is more impactful on the availability of affordable housing than increasing the stocks, and we're going to continue to keep up that fight. So with that, really thank you for your time, really thank you for your interest in this issue, and we're going to keep up the fight and hope to have you with us. And if you'd like to learn more and you don't get to ask a question today, you can reach out to me. My email is dan@danhelmer.com. We'd love to have you as part of the coalition to build more housing in Virginia. We'd love to have you part of the discussions on how we get this bill forward. And we're really excited by the fact that candidates across the state are talking about the need to increase access to housing by building more housing, which we think is the single most important lever we can pull.
Thank you so much, Delegate Helmer. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share what you're doing to address the issues of affordable housing here in Northern Virginia. We're going to pivot for a moment, and we want to acknowledge certainly all of the partners, localities, as well as nonprofits and the groups that have come together to make this event possible for you today. So with that being said, I want to turn it over now to the Director of the Office of Human Rights and Equity Programs, Mr. Michael Sims.
Hello. I don't know if I need a microphone, but it's here. Just want to acknowledge some people here that assisted us in making this event today. First of all, I'd really like to acknowledge Mr. Barksdale Higgins. He did most of the organizing and planning for this event. I'd also like to thank the staff of OREP, my office. If you're a member of OREP, please stand. This was a joint effort that everyone participated in, and want you to know that we appreciate the work that you did on this. Thank you. Even though she has left already, really like to thank Delegate Michelle Maldonado for taking time out of her busy schedule to come and speak to us today. Likewise for Delegate Daniel Helmer, who wasn't able to be here, but was gracious enough to meet with us virtually. So let's see, I'd like to acknowledge some of my counterparts here. Mr. Raul Torres here. He is the director of the Office of Human Rights for Prince William County. As you know, this event is a regional event, and because of that, we partnered with all of our partners in the region, in the Nova region. So thank you for being here. Is Anna McClure here? No? Okay. Hillary Chapman? They're not here. Most of these people are here. They're in the afternoon session, so they may not be here, but these are some of the people that participated and helped us to plan this event and put it on for you. Liz Hayes, the director of the Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation, DPOR. Raul Torres, as I just mentioned. Anna McClure, acting legal director of the City of Alexandria Office of Human Rights. Casey Songster, acting housing assistance program manager, Arlington County. Mary Horner, division chief, landlord tenant division, City of Alexandria. Leslie Barrow, human service specialist, City of Falls Church. Lois Ray, housing specialist, Fairfax County Office of Neighborhood Community Services. And Hillary Chapman, housing program manager, Metropolitan Washington Council of Government, or COG. Some of the other organizations that were here: Susan McClanahan, Senior Fair Housing Rights Program Manager at the Equal Rights Center. Thank you for participating. Sabrina Ware, Esquire, Deputy Director of Advocacy at Legal Services of Northern Virginia. Fressy Bonilla, Chief Program Officer, Center of Assistance to Families. Teresa Querez, Chief Program Officer, Center of Assurance for Families. Larry Laws, Jr., CEO and President of First Homes Alliance. And also from Zoya Henson, and you heard her speak earlier. But lastly, I would like to acknowledge an organization. I'm going to ask Mr. Joshua Vaverka to come up, please. Josh. This is Josh Vaverka. He is from an organization called INVAR, and that is the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors. And I asked Josh to come up today because I have been with the Office of Human Rights and Equity Programs since 2008. And I don't think that there has been a time when INVAR hasn't been a part of anything that we have planned. I don't think there's been a time that we've put on any type of program, had any type of event, reached out to the community for any type of information when we did not include INVAR. And I just want you to know that we appreciate INVAR's support throughout the years. And as you know, every year we have a Student Human Rights Commission, and every year we put on an art contest. And by the way, if you have any high school students in your home and you live in Fairfax County, the Student Human Rights Commission is open. We usually pick 2 commissioners from each high school in Fairfax County, and they meet as a commission throughout the year and do projects. And so during the summer months, look on our website and you'll see the applications. And one of the things that they do once a year is they have an art contest where they put on, they express themselves however they choose, and we pick a winner. And one of the things that INVAR has supported us on is in supporting those prizes to those winners. And this year, I think the winners, I think I have it here. And I'd like to acknowledge Jessica Metzger. She won first prize. And also Alexa Vasayev, who won second prize. But with that being said, we'd like to present a copy of the award-winning entrance to INVAR for their wall to show the support that they've given to the Student Human Rights Commission. So we'd like to present you with that. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was some great information that we received during the earlier morning session from all of our speakers. Delegate Maldonado, Ms. Zola Henson, as well as Delegate Helmer. And we really appreciate the time that they took out of their schedules because each one of them were very busy. As a matter of fact, Ms. Henson is working on a case now for one of our participating organizations dealing with some challenges that they're receiving from the federal level in terms of work that they're doing and grants that they're receiving. So we really appreciate her making herself available to meet with us this morning. At this time, we want to pay tribute to a concept that's very near and dear to many of us present at this moment, and that is fair housing. So I would like to introduce the Providence District Supervisor, Ms. Dahlia Palchak, if she would come down and present the county proclamation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
it's good to see some familiar faces, and this is, we're having committee meetings all day. I wish I could be with you all day, but I get to come and hang out with you on the lunch break. I just want to thank everyone who's helped put this together. As you know, housing has been a challenge in our community, and addressing the history of that and how we mitigate that today is huge. Personally, with my family, with my friends, growing up here, many of us saw the challenges that still exist in fair housing. And even though it can be a challenge to address legally, a challenge to address strategically and practically, there's no reason we shouldn't keep working harder at it and making sure that as a team and in celebrating One Fairfax that we do that work. I'm fortunate enough to represent the middle of the county, the best part of the county, the most transit forward-ready part. I have most of Tysons, all of Merrifield, Elkton, all the way to Falls Church, and every part of my community in Providence, I think, is representative of the diversity of our, not just the people, but our housing and our housing types across the county. So it is my pleasure and really my honor to get to present this proclamation, but it really, in my mind, impacts the work that all of you are doing every day, that our staff are doing every single day, that our partners are doing every day, but also the challenge that there's so much more that needs to be done, whether we're focused on our most vulnerable communities, our immigrant communities, our communities of color, and the work that we've done in the past that has worked against fair housing. So I'm not sure who I'm presenting it to. There we go. But it is my pleasure to present to you a proclamation that I believe received unanimous support from the Board of Supervisors. Whereas April 11th, 2025 marks the 57th anniversary of the Federal Fair Housing Act, and I know we're a little bit late, but April is celebrated throughout the nation as Fair Housing Month to recognize the value of equal housing opportunities. And whereas 2025 marks the 51st anniversary of the Fairfax County Human Rights Ordinance, which provides equal housing opportunities for all residents in Fairfax County, regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, family status, military status, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, marital status, or source of funds. And whereas during the past year, members of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, the Fairfax County Human Rights Commission, Fairfax County agencies, housing industry members, cultural groups, community associations, and nonprofit organizations have worked to expand equal housing opportunities in Fairfax County. And whereas equal housing opportunities enhance the quality of life for the entire community and our highest ideals of diversity, community, and freedom. Now therefore be it resolved that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, on behalf of all residents of Fairfax County, does hereby proclaim April 2025 as Fair Housing Month in Fairfax County and urges all residents to join in promoting equal housing opportunities in Fairfax County and throughout the United States. And that is signed by the chairman, myself, and Supervisor Rodney Lusk. And a huge, huge thank you to Michael. It's nice to be on this side of the podium. Huge thank you to Michael. I know there's so much that we need to do, and the programs, the analysis, and there's no greater power we have at the local level than housing and our ability to address land use and access to housing across the community. So thank you for helping us do more, and thank you for empowering our community to do more.
And thank you for always supporting us for the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Palchik. Great. We appreciate you so much. Now, as I noted, and as it was acknowledged before lunch, we here in Fairfax in the Office of Human Rights and Equity Programs, we have really benefited from our long-standing relationship with the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors. And they have one of their representatives today who you met earlier, Mr. Joshua Viverka, who is the Vice President of Government Affairs. He's going to come down now and help us pivot to really, as we move into the second session, to talk and get sort of down in the weeds to talk about some of the issues that I believe many of you took the time out of your schedules to come here and listen and to find out about today. So I will not take up any more of your time. Mr. Ververker.
Thank you, Barksdale, and good afternoon. As Barksdale said, I'm Josh Verka, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors. It's an honor to be with you here today. We're proud at NVAR to support this program and as well as housing programs across the entire Northern Virginia region with each of our local governments. As the leading voice of real estate in the greater Northern Virginia area and really across the DC metro region, NVAR is committed to realtor success, promoting ethical practices and excellence in the real estate market, but also, in advocating not just for our members, but for our communities and for all home buyers and sellers and renters impacted by local, state, and federal laws, things that are affecting the attainability of homes and the quality of life in our region. We have over 12,000 members, and they facilitate tens of thousands of real estate transactions each year. That in turn supports $35 billion in economic activity and over 185,000 jobs annually in our region. Our elected leaders recognize the magnitude of the realtor impacts and on the Northern Virginia economy and beyond, and they listen to the realtor voice when it speaks. So increasing housing attainability, making the dream of homeownership a reality for the greatest number of people possible, that is our number one advocacy goal. To do that, increasing the supply of housing is our single highest imperative. There's just not enough homes available on the market to go around. There's also not enough attainable homes for first-time home buyers. I think Delegate Maldonado said, she bought a 1,200 square foot home as her starter home. I did as well. We're not really building 1,200 square foot homes anymore as starter homes. So, there's not a lot of homes out there available for young families for buying those homes. Attainability is also impacted by many other issues, not the least of that, which is fair housing. Realtors know that an open housing market free from discrimination, it benefits the economy, it benefits our consumers, it benefits our communities. Discrimination in housing, whether that's by agents or by housing providers, by lenders, appraisers, wherever that comes from, it distorts the housing market. It closes the door on that American dream of homeownership. And for qualified buyers, it perpetuates, a history of disparities in wealth as, homeownership is still the best investment we can make to build wealth in America. And so we commend the leaders here in Fairfax and really, all of our housing leaders across the Northern Virginia region for enforcing our fair housing laws and providing resources to the consumers in the face of shifting federal government priorities that really could be impacting those efforts going forward. There's a lot going on at the federal level right now, potentially impacting not just fair housing, but also affordable housing and funding. And there's a lot of those things we're going to talk about today. Those are also impacting the economy and the overall housing market. So I wanted to just take one quick brief minute here and talk. At NVAR, we stay at the forefront of the industry. We study the market. We listen to our members who are out there practicing every day. They're talking to clients. They're talking to people in the community. How are things impacting them? Are you still in the market to buy a home? What's your job doing? They talk to people who have lost jobs. They've talked to people who are moving back into the area because they've been relocated. They've been called back into the office. We have with our partners at Bright MLS, we're closely monitoring those housing market impacts due to the potential changes at the federal workforce, both short and long term. We started monitoring housing stats every week beginning in February. It's very similar to what we did right at the COVID-19 pandemic. We started looking at how is this impacting housing. Right now, I could say so far there's really been no significant data that shows there's been a shift in the housing market because of the federal changes. Nothing that can be attributed specifically to that. The return to work mandates, the Department of Government efficiency reductions, it's certainly creating a vibe, a sense in the economy, but there's nothing that's really attributing to, a huge spike in homes on the market, or people suddenly selling their homes. The market has shifted a little bit. We have an increased number of active listings. There's a higher month supply on the market right now, but that shift is more towards equilibrium right now. We had been running at a very, very low inventory for a long time. What has been a tight seller's market is making a little bit move towards a more stable market. We have sustained price growth despite some fewer sales. Buyer demand is resilient right now. Homes are selling quickly. Average time on the market is 14 days. Buyers are active, they're acting decisively, they're buying with confidence right now. So, the housing market is strong, people want to buy, people still want to live in Northern Virginia. But that doesn't mean that there won't be an impact from the federal government actions from the administration, that it's not going to be a factor. We're monitoring that data going forward. There's right now what we're looking at is it's just a combination of trends, the interest rates, the pent-up demand that's out there. We are going to be very soon, in collaboration with George Mason's University Center for Regional Analysis. In June, we're going to be releasing a mid-year forecast update. We'll hold a virtual briefing on that that's open to the public. It's open to the press on June 25th. Leaders of our association will discuss kind of all of the economic developments that have gone on the first half of the year and provide an outlook for the housing market for the remainder of the year. Happy to share and invite with that to anyone who's interested. We're committed to being a resource for anyone interested in housing market and real estate market, provide local and regional market trends reports, things like that to anyone. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and we're here to be a resource for anyone who's looking for that. So again, it's an honor to be here representing NVAR, the incredible work of real estate professionals across the region. And together with the help of the advocates and the leaders in this room, I think we can definitely drive positive change in the housing for the future of our communities. We want to ensure that dream of homeownership exists for current residents, but also future residents of our area. So with that, we'll pivot to our next discussion. We have some valuable information for residents who are facing challenges paying their mortgage. So I believe we have Ms. Fresi Bonilla and Teresa, and apologize, I'll butcher names here, Kiraz from the Center for Assistance to Families, and Larry Laws from the First Home Alliance to talk about mortgage assistance. I saw Larry Laws here, so I know we have him.
Thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon, and welcome to the next session here. We're going to talk about this. We are here to give you the resources to help you through the crisis, and also those that want to move forward in reference to financial fitness and also home ownership. And so today we are partnering with two organizations. And I will bring up Fresi Bonilla, and she's the chief program officer for asset building for CAF, and she's going to introduce her organization.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fresi Bonilla. I work for Centro de Apoyo Familiar, which stands for Center of Assistance to Families. We are a nonprofit agency. We're looking to transform communities through economic and social empowerment, and we do this through collaboration of other faith-based organizations and other organizations in the community. As a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, we provide services to homeowners, home buyers, renters, by providing them financial education, resources, one-on-one counseling, and just as was mentioned, guidance is very necessary. And so we provide the guidance, we provide the education, we provide also the information that somebody needs to know in order to make the right decision. If you are looking to buy your first home, if you are looking to maintain and sustain the home you're currently in, avoiding foreclosure, if you are a renter trying to become sustainable, keeping your housing situation sustainable, and if you're looking to also move on to the next step, Just like a woman must mention, families are trying to move on to their next step, buying their first home, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve financially, we are there to support you. So thank you again. Centro de Apoyo Familiar is there to be able to assist you.
All right, thank you. Just to give you a little bit more history of myself and the next speaker. First Home Alliance is a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. I'm the founder and the president of First Home Alliance. I'm a retired Gulf War veteran. And the organization mission is to increase sustainable homeownership among our military community and low and moderate income families. And so we do that by extending financial literacy. And so far, we have educated over 20,000 individuals with financial literacy and also helped over 5,000 become first-time home buyers. And so, as what is already mentioned, as a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, we're here to help you with all those areas such as budgeting, credit, rental counseling, pre-purchase homeownership, post-purchase homeownership to help you sustain homeownership, and also foreclosure prevention and reverse mortgage counseling. We're here as a mentor, a guide, and a community resource to ensure that you are successful homeownership as long as that you would like to be. Okay, and so as we get here, I want you all to meet these fabulous HUD certified housing counselors, and I will talk to you a little bit more about the organization and the credibility of the sources of certified HUD housing counselors. Housing counseling has been a word that has been used. We're advisors, we're mentors, we're coaches, and we're not, if some people say we're therapists as well. And so housing counselors, it takes a lot to be a HUD-approved housing counseling. Up until about 10 years ago, it was not clearly defined. And so there's a national industry standard that housing agencies have to abide by. And then about 7 years ago, they defined a curriculum for our HUD certified housing counselors to be certified in all those areas that I just mentioned. And so the first person that I would like to introduce you to, a HUD certified housing counselor, senior housing counselor for First Home Alliance, is Charlene Watkins-Byrd. She's been with the organization since 2005. And she have did most of that counseling. But one of the areas that she have excelled in is the area that actually is highlighted, and that's one of the crises that we're really facing today in foreclosure and foreclosure prevention. And so without further ado, I'm trying to advance the slide. And so we'll go forward. And Charlene Watkins-Byrd is going to talk to you about the problem. Charlene?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The problem. What's the problem that we're seeing? Besides lifing, and besides our children no longer using their school stomachs at home, we are seeing an increase in expenses, right? We're seeing a reduction in income. We are also seeing our senior population. They're on a fixed income. The taxes are still taxing, and they don't know how they're going to necessarily continue to make these payments. And so, with that being said, reduction in income, increase in expenses, what are some of the resolutions for these problems? And my colleagues are really going to go into it in terms of loss mitigation. But on the surface, if we talk about our seniors, seeing their taxes continue to go up, and these individuals are on a fixed monthly income. There's so many different programs and resources that I think people aren't aware of, but one of those is the Senior Tax Relief Program. So we did have a client who came to First Home Alliance on the verge of having a sale date. We could see it in the horizon that this person was definitely going to lose their property if there wasn't some type of product or program that could assist them. So with that being said, we reached out to Fairfax County. This person did not know about the tax relief program, was able to get into that program, reduce their monthly payment significantly. And with that, with us being able to get this person approved for that program, that was able to make that monthly payment more affordable. We was able to put the past due to the rear of the loan, and they were allowed to sustain homeownership. And so I think today we're really going to be addressing different programs that can help individuals sustain. Because sometimes it truly feels as if, there is no resources, there is no assistance. But working with a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, I always tell people, whether it's pre-purchase or loss mitigation, we're going to stalk you, or at least I am a professional stalker. We want to make sure that you are able to sustain homeownership. You're able to comfortably make that monthly payment. So with that being said, I will throw it back to Larry.
Thank you, Charlene. And so going through these crises or maybe facing a crisis, it's often that our homeowners start ignoring the phone calls. They ignore the mail. And so, of course, we know how to prioritize. But a lot of us, we don't take action until there's an urgency. And so the envelopes begin to change colors. You'll get a pink one, you'll get a blue one. And so I would like to bring up our next certified housing counselor, Teresa, and she's going to talk to you about how important it is for early intervention. Teresa.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Quiroz. I'm also with Centro de Apoyo Familiar. And as mentioned, early intervention. So we all know that the key to any good relationship is what? Communication, right? So you have a relationship with a bank and you need to maintain that relationship. And that's how you, the homeowner, put the situation in front of you and it's not chasing you. So you want to make sure that you call your lender if you find yourself in that place where you're not sure where you're going to make the next payment from, how you're going to maneuver this situation, because there is a lot of paperwork, there is a lot of information that you must bring to that lender. But if you are not opening your mail, if you're not checking to see what they're asking for, then you're just kind of hiding and hoping that the situation will go away, but it's not going to. So make sure you keep those lines of communication. Make sure you call the lender. Make sure you open your mail. Make sure you meet deadlines. They're going to give you dates. We need these forms by this time. We need this document by this date, this hour. If you can't meet them, call them ahead. You know if you can comply with everything they're asking for or if you need more time. So make sure you're meeting those deadlines. Have a budget plan. They're going to ask you what's changed now. Is it employment? Is it cut in hours? What is it that now is causing you not to be able to make the payment that you were comfortably making before? So they're going to want to look at your financials. They're going to want to look at your budget plan, and then that budget plan, look at it yourself and now create a crisis budget plan based on that plan, because there's a budget where, we can splurge a little, and there's a budget where we might have to do ramen, rice and beans. We might have to cut down, because at the end of the day, what you want to stay in your home. You don't want to lose your home. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you have to pick up everything that you have going on, that you've established, that you've worked so hard, and now you lose it because you were just afraid to move forward. So don't be afraid. Work through the action plan. You sit down, you plan with yourself, with your spouse, with your partner, whoever you need to do this with your children. Involve them. Don't keep it from them, because they can feel the fear in the room. They can feel that there's something happening. So involve them and keep your attitude positive. Keep yourself in that place where you can say, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be able to work this out. If it is losing the home, we're going to lose it, but it's going to be for something better. So mentally prepare for the situation and keep those lines of communication. Look for help. HUD counselors, we are here to assist you. There's a lot of phone numbers, there's a lot of extensions, there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of forms, and we're here to guide you through that process. We're here to help you. We're here, at the end of the day, the results you're going to get are what you put into it, but we're here to assist you. So that's my take on early intervention. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Now, okay, so you heard about the early intervention. Even if you do open that envelope up, and you may even get a phone call, I'm gonna tell you, these services, they speak a different language. And so we're here, one of our next counselor, Fresi, is gonna come up and talk to you about some of those different options and products that are available, and explain to you exactly some of those options that you may have. Fresi?
Options, options, options. And that all depends on what is your situation, right? Just as it was mentioned, early intervention is key. The earlier you come for help, the earlier that you'll be helped. And also, the more options that there will be for you. There's retainment options, meaning that you like to retain your home. And there's also other options if you want to leave the home, but all to avoid foreclosure. And so if you're facing a challenging situation, a financial situation, a crisis in your home, and you're not able to pay your mortgage, you most likely are facing foreclosure when the bank takes over the home, basically selling it off at auction, right? And we don't want to do that. We don't want to have our home being taken away from us. And so what are the options if you're facing financial challenges? There's many options, and it all depends on the type of loan that you have, the type of mortgage loan, also your income situation, your household situation, the value of your home. So there's many different situations to take into consideration, and that's why, as Teresa mentioned before, it's important that when you go to a housing counseling agency, which, by the way, you could find at HUD.gov, if you like to find your local housing counseling agency, you could visit and give us a call. Now, once that is done, there's supporting documentation, right? And so reference to why that is necessary is because of all of what I mentioned. Your situation differs from your neighbor's situation, even though you may live right next to each other. It's not the same family, it's not the same income, it's not the same loan, right? And it's not the same number of years that you have been in the home. And so all of that we need to understand as housing counselors before we're able to let you know what are your options available. And it all depends on what you would like to do. We cannot say, well, we're going to save your home, guaranteed, because that's not the point. The point is we are going to guide you to the goal that you want to achieve. You want to keep your home, we're going to do everything possible, just as Charlene mentioned, to be able to help you do that, right? And so what are the mortgage options? If you like to retain your home, there is forbearance. Forbearance is the process in which the mortgage payments are forbeared. So basically put a pause in the mortgage payments, maybe 3 months, 6 months, but eventually you will have to pay those months, or they could be arranged. Now, there's the other option of a repayment plan if you have been behind a couple months and now your financial situation has improved and you're able to repay by perhaps increasing the monthly mortgage payment amounts for X number of months ahead. There's also a partial claim, which was very popular when COVID-19 happened, in which basically your past due payments were deferred to the end of the mortgage loan term, and you were able to remain current because all of the lump sum of past due debt is put to the end of the mortgage. That may not be available in all cases. Also, forbearance may not be available in all cases. Like I said, it depends on your personal situation. Also, if you like to see the possibility of a modification, which is very popular. Unfortunately, right now, the interest rates, as you know, mortgage interest rates are high. Maybe your mortgage interest rate is actually lower than what can be offered right now in the market. So achieving a modification may not always be possible. It all depends. But modification, as you know, is the adjustment on the interest rate of the loan and the terms of the loan, either by extending the amount of years, by adding a couple years to the loan term, or, like I said, modifying the interest rate on the loan. Now, if you are trying to leave the home but avoid foreclosure, you could try to sell your home with equity. Maybe you build out equity. Maybe actually you have enough equity in your home to be able to sell your home, be able to cover the debt, and be able to retain a couple of the funds so you could start over, pay off your other debt, get other housing in check, in order, and start over, right? If you like to sell and you have equity in your home. Also, there's short sale. a quick sale of your home, which could end up being that you're able to pay off what you owe in the mortgage. Maybe you won't have that much money left over, but you'll be able to cure the debt and avoid foreclosure. As you know, foreclosure ruins your credit for 7 to 10 years, and that's not a very good option if you'd like to start over sooner than later, right? Also, a deed in lieu. It's probably something nobody wants to hear about, but if it comes to be at that point, depending on your situation, a deed in lieu basically says cash for keys. I give you my deed, you give me cash to move out, to help me, establish myself somewhere else. All of these options, the housing counselors are helping you deal with or communicate with your lender, your mortgage servicer. So it's not going to be an outside lender. It's not going to be some other creditor. You're actually working with your mortgage servicer. And that's another thing you need to keep in mind. This is public information when you become late in your mortgage. And so you will get many letters saying, we can help you, all of these things. And you have to understand that you should only be responding back to your mortgage servicer, the one that you make payments to, not somebody else, because you might end up getting into risk of fraud and other impersonators that want to take advantage of the situation. So counseling agencies are there to help you distinguish that sort of thing and remain in check, and also help you find the options necessary for you. So the key is be able to contact your housing counseling agency and being able to see all your options. Thank you so much.
Okay, why? Why a HUD housing counseling agency? I want to talk to you about the role of a HUD housing counseling agency and what we can do. It's a HUD housing counseling agency. That's the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which a nonprofit has aligned itself as a part of its mission in community development and stabilizing families in the community, and have took on that role as a housing counseling agency. Now, to these agencies, she mentioned about being scammed. There's a lot of organizations out there, some scam or some just taking advantage of the situation where you would pay a large amount for administrative fees. You may charge hourly amount for the services that are provided, and also maybe guaranteeing that you're going to get a workout with your mortgage situation. Well, there is no guarantees, but one is that we will work with you step by step through an entire process, and you're not going to be scammed. To become a HUD housing counseling agency, the organization have to show that they are credible, that they are financially sound, also that they are in good standing with both as a 501c3 and all the local, state, and federal guidelines as an organization. They have to perform, show a time of performance, usually it's 12 months, providing the service before HUD, well actually, it's a HUD 22, I call it, that you have to have already provided the service before you can get authorized by HUD to give the service. And the same thing with the funding. You have to show that you're financially sound before you can actually get HUD funding. And so along with that, with the organization, you also not only have to have the trained certification of the organization, you actually have to have a certified housing counselor on staff with the organization. Counselors can only provide the certified counseling for HUD if they're employed by a HUD authorized counseling agency. Some may be afraid of the word counseling. We're basically HUD advisors, and we're here to advocate for you throughout the entire process. For the certification, you can actually check on HUD.gov, put in your zip code, and you're actually able to locate HUD counseling agencies throughout the country, the one that's closest to you. But you can also, since COVID, it has given us the opportunity to not only work locally and in our local communities, we basically can work nationwide. The counselors do a majority of their counseling and coaching via virtual, and so Zoom, Teams, and other platforms we're able to use, and of course with telephone counseling. And so the reach is unstoppable. Actually, we have target areas So the organizations you see here today have target areas in different states, all operating in different states. Those are the areas where they're on the HUD website to be located, but also have brick and mortar. So we can not only be a virtual organization, you have to have a brick and mortar and target the area where you have brick and mortar. However, you can provide services nationwide. So the organizations are creditable, and the counselors, it's a drilling test. If you actually talk to some of the individuals that have worked housing counseling 20 or 30 years ago, a lot of them could not cross the line to be certified, just a few in it, and most of them have to take the test more than once. There's a few can take it once or twice, but some have taken the test quite a bit and have to go ahead and find other professions because they cannot pass the test for HUD housing counselor. So we have certified counselors here, a wealth of experience in all different areas, and foreclosure prevention is one of those areas that we have thrived in. We cannot guarantee you that we can prevent a foreclosure. We're not guaranteeing you that you're going to get a modification, or we cannot guarantee that. But we can guarantee that you're going to get reliable service. We're going to walk you through the process, and we're going to advise you on what your next steps are going to be. Okay, and so what we would like for you to do, you have the information, but we want to talk to you if you're facing, do not wait until you're 60 days late. You lose a lot of your rights. You're in default. And so less than 60 days late, you have some options. And so, but you don't have to wait until you're 60 days late. You do not have to wait until you're 1 day late. We're going to talk to you about how taking action now and also what you should do starting now. And so if you feel that you're reaching that danger area. And so who's going to talk to you about taking action is going to be Teresa.
So take action. Don't freeze in your steps, because a lot of times that's really what we'd like to do. We'd like to crawl under the table and close our eyes, and when we open them, everything is gone. But that's not the truth. That's not adulthood, right? So we do have to take action. We're going to need supporting documents that banks are going to ask us for. Those supporting documents have to prove income or loss of income. So you want to have pay stubs, you want to have tax returns, you want to have those documents that are going to be required in order for you to be able to move forward. Have your bank statements ready, even if the account is negative, just have the documents. Have a counseling agency. We are HUD counselors that can help you navigate. There's going to be other documents that you may have to look for programs that may be available through the county, programs that may be available through the state that are going to ask you to have a deed in hand, to have your closing documents in hand. So become organized with those things. Don't be afraid to ask a counselor, how many months do I need? Do I need 2 years of taxes, 3 years of taxes? If I need a profit and loss statement because I'm self-employed, all these things you have to have in order for things to flow in a timely manner for you, so that you don't feel like you're being spun around when you make those calls, because a lot of times that's what the banks will do. If you're missing documents, they're going to tell you, they're going to give you a deadline, and then you go back into that pool of other borrowers that are trying to call. So you want to make sure that everything is in order for you to be able to provide what is being asked of you. So once again, doing nothing is not going to help. Call your bank, call a HUD certified counselor, go to HUD.gov, look for a housing counselor near you. If you are a person that likes in-person interaction, there's counselors for that. If you are virtual, there's counselors for that. If you're okay with a phone call, there's counselors for that. So that we are here to assist you, to take action. We're here to encourage you not to be afraid. I know that there's been crisis before, and a lot of people lost their homes. I think banks, I think counselors, I think government agencies really learned from that time, and so now they've implemented better ways to help homeowners. At the end of the day, if we have a community that is strong, if we have a community that is thriving, a community that is being built on hard work, on labor, we want to keep those communities. So it's no one's intention to see a street full of lost, empty homes. We want to see children playing outside. We want to see schools advancing. We want to see our communities growing. So just take the time for yourself and for your family. Do not be afraid of the process. There's people on the other end who are more than willing to assist you. So thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes. Is there maybe a general question? Because everyone's situation can be specific and unique, but if there's a general question that anyone may have that we can answer.
We can take about two. If anyone has one, raise your hand and we'll send a runner with a microphone so that we can make sure that everyone, as well as those who are live streaming, can hear you. Any questions? Y'all done a terrific job.
Really? Okay. I have a couple of questions, and I heard some of the other presentations that was going on today, earlier today, and also there's been a few visitors that have visited our table. One of the questions that covers a concern, there's often a lot of news around the national events. We know what's going on in Washington. We're right here in it, in the thick of things. And other things that are going on. Should homeowners or those struggling with their mortgages be concerned with these headlines impacting their ability to get relief or keep their homes? And so I would like Charlene to give us an answer on that.
So should homeowners be concerned about what we're seeing on the news? I'm just gonna say, I would say yes. Why? Because what we're seeing on the news in reference to our monthly, our groceries going up, our gas prices going up, our utilities going up, things of that nature, I would say, yeah, be concerned. Be concerned of what does your savings look like? Are you operating on a budget? Are you prepared for what we call imminent default? Meaning I'm good today, but I could see myself possibly maybe in 30 to 60 days not being able to make my monthly payment. So I would say, no, we don't want you to put your head in the sand or say, well, because I'm not a federal worker, this isn't necessarily going to affect me. Always pay attention as to what's going on and how it could possibly affect you, and make sure that you're prepared and you have adequate savings and those reserves in the event something did happen that could specifically affect you and your family. Thank you, Charlene.
Another concern, I know in the room, there's a lot of homeowners that's been here, and there's a name that Charlene has used, the term is repeat offenders, but don't take offense to that. And don't judge me. Don't judge. That's one of her terms. I heard her say this before, repeat offenders, but I don't want to call it repeat offenders, but actually there's a lot, because of situations in 2008 and also the pandemic, individuals have actually, some got forbearances that you didn't really have to ask for. They just immediately gave you a forbearance during the pandemic. But also some has had loan modifications that you have requested for. So a question is, I would like for Fressy to answer in reference to if a person have had a modification before, are they able to get another one?
Thank you. Well, it all depends on your situation. It all depends on your loan servicer, the type of loan that you have. But it is possible, but it all depends on how long ago was your modification done, and how is your financial situation right now, what is the loan to value situation, and so that's why it's very important all these questions are addressed when you are able to meet with a housing counselor. They get to take a look at your specific situation, because it could be yes and it could be no. It all depends on the situation and the details.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now, we spoke earlier about opening mail and things of that sort. There's a lot of solicitation out there, and so you're going to get something in the mail. Everyone look at public records. They also, I think, the services, mortgage company may be sharing information when you're late or falling behind on a payment. And so I would like to ask the question, is that if a law firm or other organization asks for you to pay $1,500 for them to do a modification request for you, would that be something that you should accept or consider?
I would say if you're in that possibility, then yes, go ahead and pay for the service. But if you're facing a situation where you're having a challenge or imminent default, then you rather take those $1,500 and put them towards your mortgage, and then speak to a service provider and speak to a HUD counseling agency. We are not charging you. You could make a donation to the foundation, but we're not charging you to offer you the services. So I would say apply those limited funds that you do have to something more sustainable for you.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Okay, and so with that, we're going to cover information on how you can get in contact with the two organizations here today. So, Fresi, could you tell them how to find more information about CAF?
Yes, you can visit our website, www.mycaf, that's CAF as in family.org, www.mycaf.org, where you can see all our different offices. We have an office in Virginia, in Woodbridge, and also Maryland, DC, and Massachusetts, and Puerto Rico. And so you're able to reach us through the phone, through email. That's how you can contact us. We speak Spanish and English, so all of our housing counselors are bilingual, Spanish and English, and we're able to accommodate other languages as well.
All right, thank you. Now, all our housing counselors are not bilingual, but we do referrals and we do have bilingual on staff. And so, but that is a big advantage, and please take advantage of the housing counselors that have bilingual, and please refer for that's the needed profession to have. Also, for First Home Alliance, we're located in Woodbridge. That's our headquarters there. We also have an office in Rockville, Maryland, and an office on the south side of Chicago. Satellite office there as well. Of course, we can service worldwide. You can get more information for our organization at firsthomealliance.org. You can also call 877-250-9025, extension 0. For immediate answer to any question you may have, send it to our helpline. The helpline is help@firsthomealliance.org. Again, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to present today, and also please give a round of applause for our certified housing counselors. Thank you.
Weren't they wonderful? They were great. Let's give them another round of applause. Boy, that was some valuable information there. Bear in mind, too, for those of you who are here presently, both organizations have tables right outside, so if you need to speak with one of them about a situation or on behalf of a family member or someone you know, take advantage of that opportunity while you have it here today. Again, they both have tables with information, and I'm hopeful that they will be able to share something or at least set up an appointment to meet with you at some later date. All right, now we're going to pivot to our first panel discussion that I would imagine some of you have been interested in. This one will be comprised of officials and leaders from the 5 government entities responsible for planning and putting this program together.
Of Human Services, we have the Community Assistance Bureau, and our Community Assistance Bureau is for those who are under the age of 60 to get rental assistance, eviction prevention funds they have, and also utility assistance when our clients are faced with shut-off notices. And then similarly for our citizens over the age of 60, we have our adult services team who are also have eviction prevention funds for our seniors. Members of our Community Assistance Bureau also attend the weekly court for those facing eviction, and sometimes they get to advocate with the judges and the landlords to help if the eviction, to stave off the eviction if it's for non-payment of rent. And then we also are lucky to partner with some great community landlords and leasing offices who have resident services staff who live there and work in the community centers that are able to give, heads up when clients that have loss of income and who are having a tough time paying their rent, so they're able to refer them over to the Department of Human Services, where we'll be able to, try to mitigate you know, their circumstances and hopefully give them some assistance. And then we have a state and local funded permanent supportive housing. And the residents who have permanent supportive housing, there's a special pot of funds for them for utility shut-off and eviction prevention. And then sometimes we have really good, some of our nonprofits refer clients to the housing programs and the Community Assistance Bureau when they know that the clients are having hardship like loss of income and help paying rent and utilities. So couple of options for our Arlington residents.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks.
So you residents there in Arlington, you see who you need to talk to. This is the expert, and those of you who happen to be watching on the live stream, contact and you can ask to speak to Ms. Songster and she can point you in the right direction.
Thanks.
Mr. Torres, please share with our audience if Prince William has any programs or options available for residents there whose jobs have been terminated or are now faced with challenges in having to make those housing payment obligations.
Well, the first thing that I'm going to tell you is how Prince William handles housing. We have a Department of Housing and Community Development, which is 99.9% dependent on federal funds. That's scary right now. And most of the programs are, funded by different parts of federal funds, including rental assistance, which formerly known as Section 8, which is the $33 million we received in Prince William County to assist people. Within those $33 million that we have a number of emergency vouchers for assistance. So for people that are renters and lose their jobs, that's one source that we certainly can use. The emergency vouchers that we use for emergency circumstances. We have vouchers set aside for veterans that may be encountering problems and for other groups, disabled people and others. All our programs, or most of them, serve low to moderate income people, which means that if you lose your job, you're almost immediately open to receiving that help, because you become a low to moderate, no income receiving person. So that's a way of receiving all of our assistance. Our pots of money are basically Section 8, home, CDBG funds, community development block grants, and competitive grants, special grants that we receive from federal government. We assist with rents. We assist with homelessness. If there's emergency homelessness, we have programs that will assist you with temporary sheltering or transitional housing. And we have programs, if you have a little more time, for first-time home buyers, where we assist with closing costs and expenses for owning a home. And we provide housing counseling too. So those are the ones that we have, and we're just wetting our feet in a new ordinance that will create affordable housing for Prince William County. And we'll create a trust fund that Arlington has for many years. We'll create a trust fund to help developers, for-profit and non-profit developers, to develop more rental and homeowner affordable housing units for our community. But we have limited help like everybody else. Some have a little bit more than others, but we have limited help to encounter these kinds of situations without additional help from programs from state and federal government. And the environment is not looking like that help is coming soon.
If anything, they may be part of the problem, at least at the federal level anyway, so, no. Thank you so much, very good. So people in Prince William, you see now who you need to contact, Mr. Torres's office, and maybe they can be able to, if not assist you, point you in the right direction. Now, I'm going to leapfrog all the way to the far end and speak to Ms. Horner. Ms. Horner, will you please share with our audience here what resources or programs Alexandria has that will be available for residents to utilize if they are facing challenges trying to meet their housing payment obligations?
Sure, thank you. Can you all hear me? Hopefully you can hear me. I'm a visual learner, so I brought some papers that I'm going to kind of guide you through because this is something that you can find online as well. So we'll kind of go through it together. Similar to Prince William, we have an Office of Housing, but we also, I don't want you to necessarily call our office if you're seeking financial assistance. So I have that caveat right at the beginning. Our rental assistance, emergency rental assistance at Alexandria is administered through our DCHS. So it's the Department of Community and Human Services. That is where you'll get on a waiting list. Usually it's a few weeks out for an appointment to screen you for rental assistance. There are a few parameters. You need to be a resident of the city. You need to have a balance, so you need to be behind in your rent. You do need to prove that you have income moving forward, and there are a few other criteria that you need to meet. But they do cover up to 3 months of rent for those who are in an emergency circumstance. So there's an immediate sudden loss of income. Sometimes that is in the form of, I got sick and I couldn't work for a week. It could also be an unexpected expense. So if you had a car accident or a bill you didn't know you had to cover, that is also one of the criteria. So when you're looking at this online, this is our resource guide, and this is on the front page of the Office of Housing's website. We have this in a variety of languages. But when you're looking out at this right here, experiencing a housing crisis, this is where you will find the information for where to contact DHCS. So go ahead and contact there. But I wanted to cover some other resources as well if you are struggling with making payments. So we also have a rent relief for older and disabled adults program. That is for individuals who are over the age of 62. There is a limited income, so you can't be above a certain threshold, but if you qualify, you can receive ongoing monthly payments, either I think $375 or $500 a month to assist you with that ongoing rental payment. I believe there's a really small wait list right now, so there's a pretty good likelihood of qualifying for that program and getting in somewhat quickly. We also have some other resources. Sometimes it is just a situation where I need to move. I can't afford where I am now on an ongoing basis. What other affordable options do you have for me to look at? And so I wanted to just share 2 different resources that we have at the Office of Housing that you can find on our website. So this one is just a list of all of our affordable housing. So these are project-based units throughout the city. These are LIHTC properties throughout the city. Some of these are going to be income-based, but more likely than not, if they are low-income housing tax credit, this is going to be based on the average median income of the area. So it's more affordable than your market rate, but maybe not based on your income. There's a whole list of all the different properties and the contact information for these properties. And if you wanted to contact any of them, just go, rather than going through the Office of Housing, we do have the contact information for each of these properties. The other thing I wanted to just show everyone is this is a monthly document that we put out usually around the 5th of the month, but we do reach out to all of the landlords who are included in this list, and we say, what do you have available right now, upcoming this next month? We have residents who are looking for housing right now, and we want to make this simple for them and guide them to you. So they send us every single month whatever availability they expect to be coming up. This is not limited to Alexandria residents. This is for anyone who is maybe looking to move to the city but wants to know, where can I specifically, I don't want to waste my time and call every single property on this list. What is available next month? This is something that we send out in an e-news every single month. So if you want to sign up for that on our website, this will just automatically come to your email. Every single month you can just check and see what is available. And it also is broken up by the number of bedrooms. So if you're looking for a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, we have those listed on here as well. Again, some other resources, we do have home ownership resources, we do have first-time home buyer. The city of Alexandria does have a housing authority, and that they administer our housing vouchers and our public housing program. I will just admit that the waiting list is closed currently, and it is quite long, so I'm not sure when that would be opening, and I don't want to sell that as a real opportunity right now for those who are in immediate crisis, but it is something that the city does have. So.
Great, thank you so much for that. That's very helpful. So any of you who happen to be residents of Alexandria, contact our office, go to the website. You see the information that's going to be available there, and that will help to give you some guidance as to which department or which agency you want to contact regarding your specific need at the time. So now I'm going to turn my attention to Ms. Barrow. Hello, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Can you share with us information and options that Falls Church has for residents whose jobs may have been terminated or are facing some type of challenge in having to make those housing payment obligations?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the City of Falls Church is relatively small. It's only 2.2 square mile with a population of approximately 14,000 people. And based on the latest Northern Virginia Regional Commission, the statistics indicated at least 16%, approximately 16% of the workforce in the City of Falls Church are federal employees. But we do provide emergency, similar to other jurisdictions, we do provide emergency financial assistance. We do have the criteria similar to other jurisdictions, but one of them that we've removed is the need to demonstrate ongoing source of income to accommodate expenses, because we understand if somebody has lost their employment and in need of assistance, they wouldn't have that in place. We do have limited funds, of course, so it's a one-time emergency assistance with a maximum of $1,000. And we also seek resources from a local nonprofit organization for additional funds. The city, even though it's independent, and we heavily contract with Fairfax County for a lot of our services. But of course, the emergency financial assistance is done in-home. We do have other programs I'd really like to mention, similar to other jurisdictions, Alexandria. We have the real estate tax relief program for the elderly and persons with disability. We also have a one-time rental assistance for the elderly and persons with disability as well, for those who rent. The first one I mentioned, it's for homeowners. And we have the affordable dwelling unit program and the first-time home buyer program as well. I just wanted to add that. But yes, we do have our emergency financial assistance. There are no wait lists. It is on a case-by-case basis. And the City Council, given the current situation, has set aside contingency funds in the event we have an increase of numbers of those in need of emergency financial assistance.
Great, thank you so much. So for those of you who happen to be residents there in Falls Church, this is the young lady. You can contact her or contact her office, and they will be able to provide you with some guidance and directions in terms of trying to address some of your issues or the needs that you may have at that particular time. So thank you again. So now I'm going to turn my attention to Mr. Ray. Will you explain and share for our audience if Fairfax County has any programs or options or resources available for residents who may have experienced termination of their job or facing some type of housing payment challenge?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. At times, community members are one phone call, one diagnosis, or one crisis away from facing a cycle of uncertainty. Fairfax County community members can start by calling Community Coordinated Services Planning at 703-222-0880. Coordinated Services Planning is a call center with about 45 specialists ready to help you unpack your situation. When you call seeking rent assistance, housing assistance, any foundational needs, we'll offer an assessment to help the community member identify their strengths and connect them with the appropriate resources where they need support. Fairfax County is privileged to have a big network of nonprofit partners, and with their support, when a community member calls, we unpack the situation. We can explore what support we can offer. If appropriate, we can raise a financial package to help them with their rent. We can also help them walk away with a plan and resources to leverage. There are limits, but we do the best we can based on available resources. CSPs work hard to make sure we have the latest, most relevant resources so we can discuss a plan moving forward based on each community member's situation. I know we have some CSPs present here today. I know they're here because they want to make sure that we have the most updated information. I've already connected with a few of you, mortgage assistance, counseling. If I haven't spoken with you, please let's connect. One thing to note is we don't only help with rent. I know as mentioned earlier in the day, housing is at the core. But when CSP offers an assessment and we speak with a community member, we understand the makeup of everything that's going on. The older adults, the school-age kids, we want to make sure that they have those connections to help, that they understand that there's summer camps for their kids, older adult resources. We want to make sure that they're connected to seasonal resources like energy assistance, or it's time to do your taxes, you have free tax prep services. Lately, we've been seeing an uptick in mortgage assistance, mortgage requests. Slowly, we do anticipate mortgage assistance to continue to increase, especially with what's going on in our current climate. Especially knowing some of the federal workforce has taken deferred resignations and knowing that that expires in September. I look forward to working with our neighbors and our partners to learn from each other what's working in your neighborhood and how we can work together.
Thank you so much. So Fairfax County residents, you would contact his office there, and I'm sure that they will be able to point you in the right direction and try to address whatever needs, particularly housing payment needs and issues that you may be dealing with or facing at that time. So the one point that I would have wanted to make while I have all of these fine individuals here is the fact that, again, this has been a regional approach where we have all come together to try to face some of the problems that you may be dealing with head on and try to identify options and resources that would be available if anyone is facing some type of housing payment challenge. So they have been critical. They were working with us here in Fairfax County from the very beginning. So I really want to emphasize the fact that this is not a Fairfax issue or program. This is a regional program. This is a regional effort. And we have all locked arms and joined together to try to stand in that breach and to try to bring information that we think would be of interest and of value to you. So with that being said, will you please give them another round of applause? For our final panel discussion this evening or this afternoon, we have an excellent group of individuals from enforcement agencies and legal services organizations who are going to present and share some information that may be of value to you, particularly if you feel that you may be experiencing some type of mistreatment or perhaps discrimination or any type of challenge that may impact you in some way that you feel you need someone, an agency, to step in and to work with you, either to advocate for you or to look into and investigate any issues that you may have. So with that being said, I want to introduce the next group of panelists. From the Equal Rights Center, we have Ms. Susan McClanahan, who is the Senior Fair Housing Rights Program Manager. If you can't come on around, and I'm going to direct them where I need them to sit.
Choose the best chair for me, please.
Right here.
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry. No, you're right here.
Oh,
This is the best chair.
thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Michael Sims from Fairfax County, the director and my boss.
Now, where to, Susan?
Next to Ms. McClanahan.
Richard?
Come on down.
I'm next to the best chair.
Next, I want to welcome Ms. Sabrina Ware, who is the Deputy Director of Advocacy for Legal Services of Northern Virginia. And you will take that middle chair there. Thank you so much. Next, we have Ms. Liz Hayes, who's the Director of the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations for the state of Virginia. Ms. Hayes? And for the housing, the Fair Housing Office there. Yep. Thank you for that. And last but not least, we have Ms. Anna McClure, who's the Acting Legal Director for the City of Alexandria's Human Rights Office. No, you're going to go beside Ms. Hayes. Great. All right. So let's get started with the questioning here. Hello, Ms. McClanahan.
Good afternoon.
Good.
Everyone feeling energetic? Yeah? Woo!
You like that energy. Tell me, what have you and your organization, the Equal Rights Center, found to be some of the most effective strategies for ensuring strong, fair housing enforcement in Northern Virginia?
Yeah, so the Equal Rights Center, one of the strategies that we use that we have found to be exceedingly effective is what's known as fair housing testing. This involves two individuals posing it, for instance, as interested renters and going to a housing provider and seeing if they receive similar or different treatment. And these testers will have similar profiles except for one characteristic, whether that's race, national origin, one is a parent with children, the other is a single adult. And the benefit of testing is that it allows us to identify discrimination without anyone ever having to have that experience. And the issue can then be addressed. For instance, Fairfax County and some other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia actually use testing to identify fair housing barriers in their own counties and cities so that they can more proactively address discrimination. The housing providers can also use fair housing testing in order to identify potential issues with their own staff and employees and kind of course correct any problem areas before prospective tenants have that experience. And we also use testing actually for systemic investigations, and when necessary, we'll bring enforcement actions such as lawsuits, or for instance, actually filing a complaint at the Virginia Fair Housing Office or Fairfax County Office of Human Rights and Equity Programs in order to address that issue and provide meaningful relief to ensure that anyone, for instance, maybe a housing provider says they don't take vouchers, and we have discovered that during testing, we can make sure that vouchers will now be accepted at that property moving forward so that no voucher holder actually experiences that barrier when they're trying to move in.
Thank you so much. That is very helpful. I want to turn our attention now to Mr. Sims, always a prudent and level-headed leader. How can local residents and community members, i.e. nonprofits, advocacy groups, etc., support the enforcement and/or compliance of fair housing laws here in Northern Virginia?
Well, the first thing I would say is get involved. Educate yourself on your community and what's going on in it. I would say participate in local conversations, whether it be government or local agencies. Also, if you see something that is not right, voice your disdain for that. My thing is that most marginalized groups never really get a lot of support until those that are not marginalized or in that group support them. And so we all know right from wrong, and we all know what is appropriate to do. And if you educate yourself about the laws and contact local agencies such as my own, if you're in Fairfax, of course, or you own a business in Fairfax, my office provides trainings. If you're a housing provider, we will provide training. We'll answer questions on how to do it. And I think that the key to, Fairfax has adopted this One Fairfax principle, and the key to that is participation from everyone. That in order for us all to be successful, we all have to strive towards that same goal. And the only way that we're going to do it is for us to treat each and every other person and make those opportunities available to each and every person within the county. And so I would say educate yourself, speak out, and get involved in your community.
Thank you, sir. Hello, Ms. Ware. This is our expert legal eagle. Will you address some of the legal issues and potential rights under the law that tenants should know if they fall behind on their rent or are facing eviction?
Sure, thank you. Just to start and give a framework for some of the information I'll be sharing, there is a document that you can find pretty easily online through a search called the Virginia Statement of Tenant Rights and Responsibilities under the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. If you just do a search for Tenant Rights and Responsibilities Virginia, it will direct you to this document on the Department of Housing and Community Development. And everyone, when they sign a lease, is actually supposed to receive this document from their landlord. So you may have it tucked away somewhere, but if you don't, you can find it online. And it goes through very basic rights and responsibilities that tenants and landlords have. So for example, in Virginia, under the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act, tenants have a right to a written lease. A landlord is actually required to provide a written lease. If you don't have a written lease, then there's sort of a fallback statutory lease that provides, very basic provisions. So, a starting point in any tenancy dispute or challenge is to look at your contract, which is your lease. That will give you a lot of information about what additional rights you may have. So I always say, start off reviewing your lease and looking at your lease. In addition, tenants have a right to request copies of receipts when they pay their rent. So if you are paying your rent, it's always recommended to keep some sort of record or documentation. And even though your landlord doesn't have to give that to you by default, if the tenant asks for a receipt, the landlord is required to provide that receipt. So, because if something happens down the road where you do fall behind, or maybe you haven't fallen behind, but there's some disagreement about charges, it's important to keep that documentation and those records. In addition, a tenant may also request a written statement of all charges and payments over the past 12 months. That's usually referred to as a rental ledger. So that's another way you can sort of reconcile what's in your rental ledger. What are you being charged for? Does that match up with what's in your lease? And then are you being properly credited for the payments that you've made? And then hopefully you have your receipts where you've kept track. So these are just things that tenants can do in anticipation of something potentially arising. If you do fall behind on your rent and you're faced with the possibility of an eviction, you still have certain rights as a tenant in Virginia. So first and foremost, a landlord must follow the court process. There is a court process. So that would usually start out with some type of a notice. The notice first comes from the landlord, not from the court. And in Virginia, it's usually a 5-day pay or quit notice if you're behind on rent. If you're in some type of subsidized housing, you may have additional rights and protections, and there are some federal regulations that require 30-day notices in certain tenancies. But regardless, if you're a tenant, you have a right to a notice. Once the notice expires, then the landlord would have to file an action in court seeking repossession, and that's called an unlawful detainer. Sometimes the name of that is a little bit confusing because it sounds like something else, but that is essentially an eviction action in Virginia courts. And again, the landlord has to go through the court process. There's an opportunity to appear before a judge if there's a dispute or a disagreement. You may be able to provide evidence. And so the landlord can only proceed with an eviction that's carried out by the sheriff's office in whichever locality the property is in, with a court order of possession. And then there's a writ of eviction that's served by the sheriff's office. And then one final thing I wanted to mention with regard to evictions and rights and protections, even if a case proceeds in court, again, there's a process, there's a timing for things. The tenant still has certain rights, and there's something called the right to redemption, or sometimes that's referred to pay and stay. So if you fall behind, your landlord takes you to court and an order is entered, the tenant can still avoid eviction by paying up what is owed and getting to a zero balance. That has to be done 48 hours before the sheriff's eviction is scheduled. So again, there's various rights and protections sort of throughout your tenancy from start to finish. And I would again recommend looking at the Virginia Tenant Rights and Responsibilities. Each of these topics has a heading, a summary of what the law is, and then sort of embedded in there, you can click to the actual code if you want to read and learn more.
Thank you so much. Quite helpful. All right. Ms. Hayes, it's a pleasure having you here today. Please share with our audience what protected classes are covered under the Virginia fair housing laws and how do they compare with the federal protections?
Thank you for the question. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Fairfax County team, for the invitation. It feels so good to be here and to see some of my former colleagues. So I'm happy to be here with you all. Under our Virginia Fair Housing Law, which, as you all know, prohibits discrimination in residential housing based on 12 protected classes. Those classes are race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, or the presence of children under 18, disability, being disabled or perceived as a person with a disability, and elderliness, defined as age 55 or older. And also, the 4 protected classes were added in 2020 and 2021, which makes a total of 12 protected classes that are now covered under our state fair housing law. And those additional classes are source of funds, gender identity, sexual orientation, and military status. And comparing those to the federal protections, the Federal Fair Housing Act, as many of you know, has the following 7 protected classes. Those are race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. So our state law offers broader protections than the federal fair housing law by including those additional protected classes, source of funds, sexual orientation, gender identity, military status, as well as elderliness, which was already one of our protected classes in Virginia.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Very good. Now I want to turn our attention to Ms. McClure. Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Now, in Alexandria, what appears to be the fair housing issues or complaints you see filed most frequently? And what strategies do you believe will be most effective to prevent these issues from continuing to increase in frequency?
Thank you. So I would say I have 4. But the single biggest one I would say, and this is probably true in other areas as well, like in employment, disability is a big category for us in fair housing. One, because there is an affirmative obligation to provide accommodations, and the law around disability and accommodations is more nuanced and more individualized than other areas. So even people trying to do the right thing can inadvertently mess it up. Another issue has to do with the accessibility of the building and the common areas themselves, and the ADA comes into play there. And that can be challenging because a lot depends on when the building was constructed, whether it was altered significantly. And then another issue we see has to do with people who become disabled and need to make alterations to their own unit, and how willing the housing provider is to work with them. They don't necessarily have to fund the person's alterations, but there are times when they oppose the person doing it. The good thing about a lot of those is they are often some of the cases we can resolve more easily because there is a very concrete thing the individual is looking for. It's not money, they want the accommodation or the ability to make the alterations, or there may be relatively inexpensive solutions to some accessibility challenges. Another issue we've seen, although less so now because of the fear factor, is national origin. Right now, not so much. People are very afraid. And another, challenge I was thinking about what Raul was saying, who's our counterpart in Prince William, about federal funds. One other challenge has to do, we have a large resettled refugee population in Alexandria. And if the resettlement agencies that pay their rent when they first arrive are no longer receiving that funding, most localities are not going to be able financially to make up the gap, nor do they have the infrastructure to sort of take over the administrative functions of administering that kind of a program. Another one we get a lot of calls about and have to refer elsewhere have to do with source of funds. That's one I'm hopeful that we can get added to our code for housing now that we don't have a Dillon rule problem because the state law includes it. So for right now, we do have to refer those elsewhere. And then familial status comes up sometimes, and I would say mostly in the context of amenities. We had one recently where there was a green space and there was a sign that said no children on the grass, which that's a no, and pools and anywhere there are amenities. And so hitting on some of those solutions, a lot of them have been brought up here already. So one, testing. I think individual discrimination complaints can be really hard to prove. And so doing the testing where you sort of set up that sort of perfect experiment with the, your variable allows us to catch those things ahead of time and be proactive about enforcement and hopefully prevent anyone from having to go through that and then have to go through the whole investigative process. Training, like Mike mentioned, I think one of the big issues we see in a lot of cases is, there's a building, and if it's an apartment, there's the management company staff. If it's a condo, you also add a board or a condo association, and there can be a lot of confusion and miscommunication in there, and pointing, management company pointing at the board pointing at the management company, and everybody could use more training on what they're supposed to do. So that is a big one, I think, as well. Collaborating across government agencies, so not only within the city, we collaborate with housing or code enforcement or DCHS, but collaborating with community partners as well. In the city, actually, the health department has taken a big lead on this with this Healthy Homes initiative. And that involves a network of both city agencies and community partners working to identify what are the biggest problems people are having in housing in the city and how do we solve them. And then I'll get into in a minute working with the community and the landlords in the city. Another example, though, is, there was an issue in the city lately with a specific housing complex where there were a lot of complaints about a variety of issues. Potential code violations, trash, safety issues, potential reasonable accommodation issues. And so a number of departments who touched those things got together to coordinate, which made for a much better, more comprehensive response to the issue. Again, as Mike brought up, engaging the community and doing that in an inclusive way. Because as we very often, the people that are facing the biggest challenges are the ones who don't trust us, don't feel like they're heard, don't feel like even if they are heard that anything will happen. And so that Healthy Homes Initiative has actually done a fantastic job of engaging the community, meeting them where they are, providing childcare. And so community members have from the get-go been part of both identifying the problems. In fact, the priority was to find out from community members, what are the problems that you've identified in housing? And some of them did surprise people because we have our own assumptions. And then they're an active part of developing solutions to that. And then finally, better laws are always great. It would be great to add, for us, source of funds to our code. But also, the better landlord and tenant protections are, the less we probably see in housing complaints, because for sometimes people end up with us because the law doesn't protect, they don't have protections elsewhere in the law, and so they're trying to make a discrimination complaint work, and so better protections are always great, but they also reduce that, the traffic to our office as well.
That was very good, and I really am impressed and like the emphasis that, or at least the work that y'all are developing with the collaborative between internal agencies. No, I like that. That's great. I'm going to throw out another question. This will probably be the last one, and this is for any panelist who wants to respond. As we look to the future, what advice would you give to those of us here today as we navigate through challenging times in the fair housing world right now? And that's for anybody.
Well, I will start. Zoila Henson spoke earlier about, not being paralyzed by fear and, remaining in action and educating ourselves. And I know that the news media cycle can be really scary to read right now. But making sure that, even if the federal administration, for instance, deprioritizes civil rights cases, that we still know that at the state level, at the local level, and still at the federal level, these protections exist, and that we are still going to use these protections to ensure people's civil rights are respected is incredibly important. I will also say that the federal administration right now might be setting the floor as to the standard on civil rights, but they're certainly not setting the ceiling. And one thing that I think we can remain energized about and pay attention to is in 2023, a number of local jurisdictions, including, I want to say, Arlington, Alexandria, Loudoun County, Fairfax, and Prince William, all participated in the Regional Fair Housing Plan. And this plan looked at across the entire region, including also the district and some Maryland suburbs as well. What are the biggest fair housing barriers that are affecting our communities? And while the report identified many specific goals to address, one of the biggest ones was affordable housing. And it set very specific goals that the local jurisdiction should work towards in order to address this large affordable housing crisis that we're facing. And those goals go for the next 5 years. And so something that we can do is continue to check in with this plan, see what the local jurisdictions are doing, how are these strategies working, are they actually reducing the barriers that have been identified, and what actions can we kind of take over the next couple of years in order to make sure that this plan is fully implemented and that we can actually have a more equitable region for everyone.
Thank you. Very good. Anybody else want to, take and tackle that question?
I'll chime in. I'll put in a plug for, if we're dreaming big, more access to counsel and attorneys in eviction and housing court generally. There is no civil right to counsel, but the risks and what's at stake when a family is facing eviction, both for that individual household and the greater community are, the risks are really large. There's a cascade of effects when a household is displaced or evicted. A lot of the families that face eviction have children in those households. And the studies have shown that having access to an attorney and an eviction defense attorney in particular has a really big impact in the outcome of what happens in landlord-tenant court. Most tenants do not have representation. Most landlords do, so it's a very sort of unlevel playing field. Some jurisdictions have tried to start passing these right to counsel initiatives that sometimes they start off small. If you're in subsidized housing, maybe you have a right to an attorney. And so, it's something that makes a big difference. Our resources are limited. We can only help so many people, but we do find that when legal aid attorneys are involved, it makes a difference. If you're an attorney and you're looking for ways to get involved and help your community, there are pro bono programs and initiatives. So.
Very good, and certainly needed under the circumstances. So for everyone out there, let's give our panel a round of applause. They certainly provided some valuable information. We're at the point where we're about to close now. I hope that many of you, if not all of you, at least were able to grab something that would be of benefit to you, even if, like I said, if it was just one piece of information. Hopefully that will be something that if you can't take advantage of, maybe you can share with someone that you know is facing some type of housing challenge, a family member, a friend, church member, whatever. So again, we want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us here today. This has certainly been a full and impactful day. I want to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation to all the speakers who came before us. A special thank you to all the localities and entities that played a critical role in planning this program. So I want to acknowledge the City of Alexandria, Arlington County, Prince William County, the City of Falls Church, the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation, the Metro Washington Council of Governments, the Equal Rights Center, the Legal Services of Northern Virginia, First Home Alliance, the Center of Assistance for Families, and last but certainly not least, the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors. I would certainly be remiss if I did not add my own personal thank you to my colleagues with the Office of Human Rights and Equity Programs, because certainly I would not be able to stand here and take the time to work with these individuals and do what I was able to do without their support and taking on some of the things that they had to do because I was not available to do so. So thank you to each and every one of you. In closing, I want to encourage each and every one to keep your head up. Though the immediate future appears to be uncertain, at least in some measures, do know that it's only temporal. Everything in this life is temporary. I don't care what it is. So the important thing is that we stick together, as has been trumpeted and championed from many of our speakers. We need to stand together, because if we're divided, that's where they can pick you off one by one. But if we stand together, we can at least hold a united front to try to weather some of the storms that have started to take place and would try to take away some of the rights and some of the amenities and even housing that some of you may be experiencing at this time. As a famous president once said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So we really need to stand together. We need each other, and that's going to be the only way, in the end, that we survive most of what we're seeing taking place today. So with that being said, I want to thank you all. I wish you all a speedy evening here. Oh, and I guess before I close, I'll let Mr. Sims make some remarks here.
Absolutely. Is this on? I don't really need it. Okay, I don't need that either. You can hear me anywhere. Listen, I echo Barksdale's sentiments about the speakers, the groups, the organizations that participated in the event today. I really appreciate you. Invar, thank you for supporting this event. I also want to thank Mr. Barksdale Hagens, our MC today, and the person that planned the majority of this event, put in many countless hours planning. I'd like to thank the staff of OREP. You guys all contributed and sacrificed this. And one of the things I'm proud of is today is one of our first all hands on deck. So it was good to see all of you in one place. That has been a while since we've done that. I'd like to thank all the panel members for joining us today. And just know that the people that spoke today, use them as a resource in your communities, whether you're in Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, any place in the Northern Virginia. If you have questions about realtors, contact Invar and do that. And thank you for attending today. So have a great day and give yourself a round of applause. Thank you. Have a good day.